So it's John Robinson's fault that the Titans got a punt blocked against Chicago. Because if they don't get that punt blocked against Chicago, you win. So that's John Robinson's fault? It's John Robinson's fault that you got a punt block the next week? It's John Robinson's fault that Will Levis, a quarterback he didn't draft, can't see Jair Alexander with inside leverage? It's his fault that Peter Skoronski, a guard they took with the 11th overall pick, absolutely blows. By the way, he didn't draft him. So it's John Robinson's fault. And today it just got right up my tuchus when I heard the Will Levis press conference and Paul asked a question and Levis didn't shy away from really embracing the narrative that this team needs time. We got the Levis cut on Levis needing time. Because this is the one that got right up my rear.
You can't really ask for patience, but Brian has talked about the need for patience with certain elements of things. How do you kind of balance that?
Yeah, like you want to come out firing and, be 3-0 and get this thing started and rolling. And, the reality is, like, sometimes it takes a little bit for a new team and a new staff and then just knew everybody to feel each other and get into the rhythm that they know that they can achieve. So we're still on that path, and I just can't wait till we get there because I know it's going to be soon.
Oh, I know. When we get rocking and rolling, baby, this thing, it's going to be, do you need time? Do we need time? Need time? Do they need time to develop, learn the offense, develop younger players, get used to life? Sure, that I'm fine with. But you don't need time. You don't need superstars in previous draft classes in order to not turn the football over 3 times a game. Do you need time to learn that you can't roll the ball on the ground to the other team? Do you need time to learn that when you're punting and you say hike and the other guys are coming to block the punt, that you need to actually block the guy in front of you, guys, stop him from getting to the punter? So why are we doing this? Why are we doing this? Hey, guys, it takes time. Everybody be patient. I know nobody's happy at 0-3, but it takes time. When Malik freaking Willis came in here with 2 weeks and 1 start under his belt and turned into Michael Vick. How can we say you need time when apparently Malik didn't need time? How can we say you need time when, again, you lost the Chicago game because you got a punt blocked and your quarterback made the single dumbest decision an NFL player has made this season? And I keep hearing from fans and media that Brian Callahan and Rand Carthon, and again, stop leaving out Chad Brinker. Diana Rossini says he's the decision maker around here. But I keep hearing from fans and media that they need time to make up for John Robinson's mistakes. Again, did John Robinson draft the terrible guard 11th overall? I mean, for crying out loud, John Robinson drafted the quarterback on Sunday that got the game ball. Wasn't your quarterback, but he drafted him to your team. He was terrible for you. He goes somewhere else. He gets the game ball. And I agree. It takes time to develop a quarterback properly, and it takes time to implement a new offense, and it takes time for a team that was the 7th worst team in the NFL last year to become a Super Bowl contender. I'm not arguing that. But it doesn't take time to not get punts blocked. It doesn't take time to stop making inexcusable turnovers. It shouldn't take time to have a defense capable of beating Malik Willis. And again, it shouldn't take time for your quarterback, who the last general manager didn't draft, to get to the line of scrimmage, see the corner playing inside leverage and say, maybe I shouldn't throw that ball out there to DeAndre. But go ahead, folks. Keep making excuses. Keep blaming J-Rob. Keep blaming Vrabel. Keep blaming Malarkey. Keep blaming Wisenhunt. Keep blaming Munchak. Let's blame Mike Hollavac and Bum Phillips and Jack Pardee. I mean, half the guys I just mentioned are dead, but why not? It's their fault the punts got blocked, right? It's their fault that Jeffrey Simmons, the star player on the team, is a minus 14 in terms of points allowed over the last 2 weeks in penalties. It's their fault, Bum Phillips, Jack Pardee, Jeff Fisher, Rustin Webster. It's all their fault that Will Levis is giving up 6 points a game to the other team, right? Because that's what the culprit here is. The culprit for the Titans is a lack of accountability. So I ask this, how long until it's Brian Callahan's fault that his quarterback's carelessness with the ball becomes something that he is responsible for? How long until Rand Carthon is asked, so why'd you draft a guard with the 11th overall pick? And why does this guard stink so badly? And how long until Chad Brinker is held accountable about his AI cancer curing model pointing them in the direction of using a top 100 pick last year on a running back, signing another running back for $8 million, but completely neglecting right tackle? Can we pull up the computer algorithms on that one? And how long until somebody asks the owner, hey, you fired your general manager who was winning in the middle of the season to replace him with a group of people, a collaboration, if you will, that does not win? Do you regret that? How long? Because I'm afraid until we decide, you know what? Probably is Brian Callahan's fault that Will Levis keeps throwing pick sixes. You're either coaching it or you're allowing it to happen. But we can play it's John Robinson's fault. We can play that game until the cows come home. But it doesn't actually make it true. Just like after week 1, the coping mechanism for fans was, it's only one game, Jared. I'm like, yeah, bad decision-making is bad decision-making. And when Will Levis, a second-year quarterback, makes that kind of a bad decision, it's pretty indicative of how his mind works during the games. It's only one game. That was the coping after week 1. The coping after week 2 was, we're going to win the next 3 games in a row. I promise you, Jared. Only to have Malik come in and look like a Pro Bowler. So now the coping is, it's all John Robinson's fault. It's all Mike Vrabel's fault. And sure, John didn't give them a franchise quarterback or an all-pro pass rusher to start off with. But that's because if he did, he'd still be GM. That's why GMs get jobs, because teams aren't good. And then you rebuild. By the way, Mike Malarkey inherited the worst team in the NFL. They were 3-13 and they had the number 1 pick in the draft. By year 2, they were in the divisional round of the playoffs. We're in year 2 of the Rand Carthon, Chad Brinker administration, but we're not allowed to have high expectations. The expectations were so high for Mike Malarkey that even after getting to the divisional round of the playoffs, he got fired. All I'm asking for is that we do this logically. All I'm asking for are fair standards. And all I'm asking for is that we give a fair representation of what's going on with the team, what's wrong, and how they can fix it. But instead, everybody else, again, it's John Robinson's fault that they're getting punts blocked. That's a coping mechanism. That's you not willing just to say, hey, the guys that have built this team with their AI models and their analytics and their collaborations and the ball bouncing their way, and it's the worst in the league. You don't want to hear that. The quarterback guru coach you hired as of right now, through 3 games, cannot get his quarterback to stop turning the ball over. This quarterback, if he can't stop turning the ball over, ain't the guy. But you don't want to talk about that. You don't want to embrace the fact that right now you're either the worst team in the league or the second worst team in the league. So again, y'all keep doing this. Embrace the cycle. Get embarrassed on Sunday, be angry on Monday, and then from Tuesday until 11:59 a.m. the following Sunday, make every excuse it takes so that you feel better about your football team. But signing running backs and receivers made you feel better this spring. But a right tackle would have made your football team better in the fall, so you wouldn't have to make up reasons to feel better. Let's put the blame where it belongs. Let's be honest. But let's stop blaming people that aren't here because it makes us feel better. Because that's what a lot of people outside the building are doing. And I worry that's what a lot of people inside the building might be doing too. 615-737-1025 is the phone number, 615-737-1025. And there's one thing that I think Brian Callahan showed for about 3 seconds on Sunday. But outside of that, I don't know if this group has it in them. And I don't know if it's an Amy thing or not. But it's something that if they don't fix this, if they don't change this, you're going to stay at the bottom of the league. We'll get to that coming up next. 615-737-1025. That's our phone number. 615-737-1025 if you want to weigh in. If you want to yell and say, it is John Robinson's fault, Jared. Be my guest. Stillman and Company, 1025, 106 through the game.
Rand, you said when at the draft or when you were introduced that your number one thing was to serve Mike. Given today's developments, did you fail at that?
I don't think we failed. I just think, one of the things Mike's always says is that the ball isn't round, so you don't know how it's going to bounce. And I don't think the ball bounced our way. We had 7 one-score losses this year, so we were in games. Just the ball didn't bounce our way. I wouldn't consider it a failure, but by no means, were we happy with the results. And that's just something we've talked about, privately and as a group over the last couple months of, how do we get this thing right and how do we get this thing, in the right direction. So I wouldn't call it a failure, but it's definitely not up to the standard.
An oldie but a goodie, Ian. The ball didn't bounce our way last year.
Yep.
And right now the Titans are 0-3, and how many of those bounces didn't go their way? I mean, when Will Levis rolled the ball on the ground, it could have bounced to the Titans. And so against the Jets, maybe you could argue that that ball didn't bounce their way. But again, I'm tired of the excuse making. I'm tired of the blaming people who aren't here. I'm tired of the making up things that aren't true. I'm just tired of it. I'm fine with saying that the Titans need to rebuild, because I think the Titans did need to treat this year like a rebuild. I'm fine with the Titans not being Super Bowl contenders, because I never considered the Titans to be Super Bowl contenders. What I'm not okay with is what's going on now, which is constant turnovers, punts being blocked, simple things. High school teams don't get penalties on field goals that cost them 7 points, much less somebody making $23.5 million. And I'm sick and tired of everybody placing the blame on the old GM or the old coach. Because, again, John Robinson didn't get that punt block. And there's one thing that I worry about this administration that they have an inability to do. And the last administration wasn't very good at this either, but at least every now and then they tried. I don't think this group really knows how to admit failure. Or at least I don't know if they're ever willing to truly do it. And again, that goes all the way back to the ball didn't bounce our way from Rand Carthon at the end of last year. He can't say it. He cannot say, we blew it on Andre Dillard. We blew it on Aaron Brewer. We blew it on Peter Skoronski. We blew it at right tackle this year. We blew it. They can't do it. He can't do it. Brinker can't do it. Brian Callahan kind of started to do it at the beginning of his post-game press conference on Sunday when he said, we're an 0-3 team and I'm an 0-3 coach. And he's right, because he is an 0-3 head coach and he has contributed to 0-3 as a head coach. But then he kind of lost me when he pivoted to making excuses for Levis's pick 6 and for Jeffrey Simmons' field goal penalty. The quarterback can't say it. Quarterback can't get up there after these games and say, I'm losing my team the game. He uses the word we a lot. He'll say, yeah, we can't have these mistakes and we can't this and we can't that. He doesn't get up there and say, I blew it. I cost our team the game. He won't do it. Where is the I'm the problem from this team? It's non-existent. And that's the culture that I feel like they're building over there. Blame somebody else. And I think this culture exists because the owner lets it. The owner only blames somebody when she fires them. So what you do is you try to make excuse after excuse after excuse after excuse so that the owner will say, okay, I'll blame John. And then it'll get to a point to where she'll turn around and blame you, and then you'll be gone too. And then once that happens, it allows everybody else in that building to blame whoever it is that just got shown the door. I mean, I remember when Burke Nihill, the team president, CEO, came in studio, and he was talking about the new stadium. This was, I don't know, Ian, like 4 weeks before J-Rob got fired? And he sat there and was like, hey, we let Mike Vrabel and John Robinson run the show, and they're doing a great job. And then they fired him. So was he doing a great job or was he not doing a great job? Like, I'm going to tell you right now, this ain't how I plan to raise my kid. Now, maybe I'm all talk, no chalk too, but I don't plan on my kid got a B. Oh my God, it's the teacher's fault. I don't plan on being that kind of parent. And I've said this a million times, and it doesn't make it less true. I love this football team. I do. I went to the game on Sunday. I baked in the 100-degree heat. My dad and I have already bought tickets, PSLs at the new stadium. I love this football team. That's why I can talk about it for 4 hours every day. But I am not going to tell you right now, I am not going to sit by while this team becomes the worst team in the NFL, which it is right now, and we need to admit it, and then make excuses. I'm not interested in that. I'm not interested in justifying why this team is so bad and blaming other people that, well, they may be at least culpable for the fact that the team wasn't so great 2 years ago. They're not the reason punts are getting blocked now. They're not the reason the quarterback is careless with the football now. So I love my team, and I hope things turn around, but I'm not going to sit here and just make excuses for them. And there are far too many people that have Twitter fingers that love to say, oh, no, don't blame us. And people with microphones in front of them that just can't say what it is, which is that this team has whiffed too many times, including the people that are in charge now. Say it with me. It's okay to say, I messed up. They can't do it, but it's okay. I promise. 615-737-1025. Our phones are driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. 615-737-1025. Lenny says, so Jared, just exactly what is John Robinson's legacy over at Titans headquarters? I mean, I don't know. Like, look, I believe that John Robinson should be remembered fondly, just like I believe that Mike Mularkey should be remembered fondly. Mike Mularkey took a team that didn't win anything, and they started to win. And I think that was a big deal. And I think Mike Vrabel's tenure should be remembered fondly. But I'm not going to sit here today and tell you that I think John Robinson should be built a statue, because I don't believe that. But again, that's not the issue. Is not what John did or didn't do. The issue is what the group now isn't doing, and the fact that people are okay with it because it makes them feel better to just blame John. That's the issue. Again, I go back to when John took over. It wasn't like Rustin Webster was nailing every draft out of the park. Remember Bishop Sankey? I do. But instead of saying, you know what, we're going to give Bishop Sankey every opportunity in the world, the way this group does with Traylon Burks, John went out and got DeMarco Murray. Remember Chance Warmack? I do. But instead of giving Chance Warmack every chance in the book, the way this group is giving Nicholas Petit-Frere, a.k.a.
PT.
The way they're giving PT every opportunity. Did you hear today Callahan's not even committed to PT not starting on Sunday?
They might both play, I heard.
I mean, good God. So instead of that, he claims Josh Klein off of waivers, who starts at guard. You see what I'm saying? It's okay for a new GM to come in and fix the mistakes the old general manager made. Like, it's okay for that to happen. But instead, they don't do it because their cancer-curing AI models say, draft a running back who we're never going to play. So they do, and then everyone sits around and says, well, gee, I don't understand why we're not any good. By the way, when you also ask about Robinson's legacy, and this isn't even about Robinson, but when you ask about his legacy, he never had a losing season. Even when he got fired, they were 7-5. He never had a losing season. So why did they get worse the year after he left? So why are they worse now than they were last year? Because of him? Okay. 615-737-1025 is our phone number, 615-737-1025. We are to some of your phones. Plus, I think been talking about something for a while, and now it feels like everybody else is just starting to catch up. We'll get to that next. Stillman and Company, 615-737-1025, 1025, 1063 the game. Let's talk FanDuel Sportsbook. This year, FanDuel is giving you a chance to win big every Thursday night with FanDuel Squares. It's the same as the Super Bowl Squares game that you've always known, only way better. That's because your numbers aren't just randomly assigned. You get to pick them yourselves, and you can pick as many as you'd like. You'll get to see the odds beforehand, and you can bet them live during the game. How sweet's that? So what are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com/JGM and bet on Super Bowl Square or FanDuel Thursday night squares. Again, that's FanDuel.com/JGM. FanDuel, my official sportsbook app. Plus, if you're new to FanDuel, you can get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. 21 and over in present Tennessee. First online real money wager, only $5 first deposit required. Bonus issue is non-withdrawable bonus bets, which expire 7 days after receipt. Restrictions apply. See terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com. Gambling problem? Call the Tennessee Red Line at 1-800-889-9789.
know this O-line is still trying to find its rhythm together. With Peter Skoronski in particular, though, maybe is he at the point where you guys thought he would be, or what are those things you need to still see out of him at that left guard spot?
Yeah, I think that left side's played pretty well for us. I think there's some things in pass pro. I think early in the first game or two, he was getting more comfortable with, and I think he played decent last week. I mean, again, we haven't played well enough anywhere to feel like we're able to win the game, but I've been pleased with where he's at. He's performed well. He's going to have to keep growing and keep performing though, because it's critical to have our high pick players play at a high level. I mean, that's how you have a good football team. And right now, we just need more, like I said.
So that was Brian Callahan today on Peter Skoronski. Now, I've been on Peter Skoronski for a long, long time. In fact, I think it was the Tampa Bay game last year, which was like right around Thanksgiving, when I was like, guys, I think there may be a Skoronski problem around here. And I said that, and people were like, Jared, you don't understand football. Peter is a plug-and-play guard. He is the man. I'm like, I don't think we're watching the same game then, because I'm watching Peter get turned, and he's getting turned by guys that I don't think are very good. Jared, you don't understand. Okay. Then it kept happening. Then they started pointing it out on the broadcast, CBS and Fox broadcast during the games. There'd be a sack, and they look at it. Well, and right there, Bob, Skoronski's got to be able to keep Malik Collins from getting to the quarterback. And then it was like, no, Jared, he had an appendectomy, and he was playing with two bozos next to him in Dillard or Duncan and Brewer. So that's not, you can't blame Skoronski for that. And then, Ian, they went back to the one that they used to love so much that I don't hear as much anymore. Bill Callahan will fix it.
Big coach.
And I'll be honest with you, I didn't make a lot of assumptions about this Titan team this year, but I assumed Skoronski would be better. Then I went out to training camp and I watched him, and I'm like, guys, I don't think he's very good. And Joe would be, I think he's having a great camp. I'm like, I don't think so, baby. But Brian Callahan kept saying he's having a good camp. He's having a good camp. He's having a good camp. And now, can we play that cut again? This is Kayla Anderson. And I love Kayla Anderson with all my heart. I've known Kayla Anderson for, like 7-8 years, something like that. And I know Kayla Anderson's got a good heart. And if I'm glass half empty, she is the opposite of that. She'll give you the benefit of the doubt. But you can even hear in her question, she's like, Coach, Peter sucks. Play the cut.
I know this O-line is still trying to find its rhythm together. With Peter Skoronski in particular, though, maybe is he at the point where you guys thought he would be, or what are those things you need to still see out of him?
That's the nicest way she can ask that. And the coach is like, I think he's doing well. What? Are we watching the same games? And so I don't want to be the guy who says, I like that band before it was cool. But you know as well as I do, I've been on this Skoronski thing for a hot second. And now everybody else is starting to see it, except apparently the coach. And that is concerning. 615-737-1025. And our phone lines are driven by WilsonCountyHunting.com. 615-737-1025. Andrew says, how can any first-round athlete suck at guard? It's literally the easiest position on offense, and yet he still found a way to be a total bust. So here's the question that I would have for the current Titans administration. Again, the ones that get none of the blame when everybody just wants to blame J-Rob or Vrabel. But in your first draft, you used your first pick on a guard. You used your third pick on a running back. And you drafted your franchise quarterback, the guy who, again, your guy has a longer leash than Bryce Young does, who was pick number 1. So you're treating him like a first-round pick. You're not treating him the way the Texans treated Davis Mills. You're treating Will Levis as if you drafted him in the first round. So why did you draft a guard who had never played it before over your franchise quarterback? That doesn't make any sense to me. If you think Levis is good enough to be a franchise quarterback, you take him 11th, don't you? And then, again, like I saw a highlight last week because the Titans didn't score 30 points, so it'll now be 1,000 days when they kick off on Monday. It'll be 1,000 days to the last time they scored 30 points. Ian, do you know who ran in a touchdown to score 30 points the last time the Titans scored 30 points in a
You
game?
said it was how long?
1,000 days.
1,000 days. No, not really.
It was Dontrell Hilliard.
Yeah, I wouldn't have guessed that.
So I say this because, like, again, a top 100 pick on a running back, I mean, that running back better be really good. It's like if you're going to pay a running back, if you're going to give a running back $10 million, he better be Saquon Barkley. So a top 100 pick on a running back, and yet he's on pace for 270 yards. You don't even use him like a starting running back. You're not even trying to use him like a starting running back. And I'm not saying you should. I think the other guy's better, but my point is you don't draft that in the third round. The value for how they're picking these guys is so fakakta. At least J.C. Latham, like if you're going to take a left tackle, you're going to start him day one, and he's going to be good enough to play it. That's the 7th overall pick. I don't have a problem with that. But, I mean, I don't get the whole value on what they, and then if you're going to draft the guard, you have to know. If I'm drafting a guard 11th, this dude's Quentin Nelson. And he ain't that. Again, I can get what you're getting at guard from Skoronski. I can get that as an undrafted free. I seriously can go get that from an undrafted free agent. And then the coach is like, I think he's doing pretty well. One texter says, you know Brian knows Peter sucks. He sees it, LOL. I mean, I guess, you know, if he wouldn't have said, no, I think Peter's doing well. If he was asked about it, he would have said something along the lines of, well, we all have to be better, but certainly that's something we can focus on, blah, 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 whatever. But he didn't say that. He said he's doing well. He said he's doing well. Skylar says, don't blame Rand, Jared. They rolled the dice and they played the board. I do wonder when it comes to these conversations with Amy, because Brian today was asked about it, said it was a good conversation you have with Amy. But I do wonder these conversations with Amy, which I assume are not as peachy as maybe they lead us to believe. I do wonder how much of it is, well, I was trying to be, you know, collaborative with Vrabel and he wanted the guard. But at the same time, like, you GM or you're not GM. But then again, who knows? Because you got Brinker's the decision maker, according to Diana. So make of that whatever you will. One text says, NFL rosters turn over so much each season, and J-Rob hasn't been here for 2 full off seasons. Why are we talking about him? Very good question, texter. And the reason I think we're talking about John Robinson, and the reason we're saying, well, blame John Robinson, is because that is the current coping mechanism. You have the worst team in the league. The guys you picked last year are not playing well. John didn't pick those guys, by the way. The guys you signed last year, Dillard, Brewer, Arden Key, what are they doing for you? Nothing. But again, it's like, well, you know, this is more, it's more convenient to just blame the other guy than it is to say, man, this team keeps getting worse. You want change. You're not happy with John. 7-5, first place. It's not good enough. We're not headed in the right direction. We want to be better. I will stop at nothing to get my football team back on track. Then they're worse. Well, I'm firing Mike Vrabel because I will stop at nothing to get my football team back on track. And now the worse. So it's either blame the other guy or face reality. And you know the answer. 615-737-1025, which is our phone number, 615-737-1025 here on the program. Chris Sanders. You know, I will tell you, we talk about sunshine and positivity Chris loves sunshine and positivity. Is Chris still as positive about the Titans and as positive about Levis after a third straight loss to Malik? We'll do that next. Stillman and Company, 615-737-1025 here on our program. Ian, Chris and I yell at each other if Chris
No
comes on,
yelling.
starts saying, everything's okay?
I mean, what are you expecting him to say?
I don't know what he's going to say. I don't think he's going to say everything's okay.
Yeah.
Put me down right now. I don't think this is going to be as rosy and peachy of a Chris Sanders call as we're used to from Chris. That's just my assumption. Tune in to Chase and Big Joe tomorrow from 9 to 11 a.m. for your chance to win all-inclusive tickets in the Eurostone Club to WWE Friday Night SmackDown at Bridgestone Arena on Friday, October 4th. Contest presented by Green Trees, a family-owned cannabis dispensary company providing high-quality legal THC products. Check them out online at greentreescompany.com. And this week's Nashville's Best Deal is Premier 6 Theater at 810 Northwest Broad Street in Murfreesboro. Whether you're a fan of timeless classics or you can't wait for the newest releases, Premier 6 Theater has something for everyone. Go to theGameNashville.com/deals and get half off a $50 gift card while supplies last. Boy, we got a good college football game of the week. Saturday at 6:30, it's Georgia and Alabama. That's right. Presented by Twin Peaks. Take your tailgate to Twin Peaks, home of the 29-degree drafts and wall-to-wall sports. And then on Sunday, I'll be at Twin Peaks out in Madison, along with former Titans receiver Chris Sanders, who joins us now on the program, presented by Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning. Chris,
yes, sir.
I have to ask you, you are Mr. Positivity.
Yes, sir.
Always believe things are going well for the Titans. They are 0-3. They are arguably the worst team in the NFL. The quarterback can't stop turning the ball over. Are you as peachy about the situation as you normally are, or are you concerned?
I'm just a little bit concerned. I mean, you're 0-3 and you got a situation with the quarterback, and then you got a situation with the offensive line. You know, and the defense is still one of the top defenses in the league, but still they're not making a play when the time is at hand. So I am a little bit concerned. But if you look at the AFC South, I mean, I know we're 0-3. You got some other teams. I think a couple other teams that are 0-3. You still got a chance to really do some things. You're really not out of it now. If you lose 4, 5, 6, and 7. Then all of a sudden now it's a room for panic.
But do you think there's any chance the Titans won't lose those games, given the fact that the right tackle's terrible and the quarterback won't stop turning the ball over?
I don't know. I just think they just need to get that first win to get a little confidence because, you know, I mean, that's how the league is. I mean, you have a team that starts terrible, they win a game, they can probably turn it around. I mean, they have some of the players and some of the tools to actually do it. They got some good coaches, they got some good players. It's just putting together a whole football game on offense, defense, and special teams.
Who are these good coaches you speak of?
I mean, come on, man. Don't do that. There's some good coaches on that staff. I mean, Brian Callahan, Bill Callahan, those are some good coaches, man. And then you got who else you got? I like Tobert, the wide receiver coach. He's a good coach.
You mean the one that came out last week and said Traylon Burks is the highest graded receiver they
have? There you
have?
go, man. Dude, you know what, Jared, I'm going to choke you, man. These are some good coaches. I mean, right. It might not seem it now. Go back and look at their track record. They've been with some good teams. They coach some great players. I know the record doesn't show it. I know they say we are what we are. Yeah, that's great. But sometimes players don't play up to their expectations.
So you're blaming the players, not the coaches.
I'm not blaming anybody. I'm just saying they need to put together a full game. If they can put together a full game, and listen, in all due respect, the quarterback doesn't make some bad plays, you still have a chance to put yourself in position and win some football games.
Chris Sanders is with us. How close are you to pulling the plug on Levis?
I mean, it's close because you know you're putting your team at a disadvantage. I'm gonna tell you why. When you look at the Jets last week, you know you have a chance to go 2 weeks ago, you have a chance to go up 14-0, then you roll the ball and they get a fumble, change the momentum, and then you have a situation. You know, last week, you know when the corner's sitting at 5 yards and you throw it strictly to the corner, things like that he's got to improve on. So I think if you lose this game, Miami, and they lose the next game, you're going to have to pull the plug and just try to get a fresh start and just try to do something different.
Do you think as a player, if your quarterback was turning the football over as much as Levis is, that you would start to lose faith in him?
I mean, no, listen, I'm a guy, and I'm not going to be Mr. Positive or Mr. Sunshine. I mean, if I call him a brother, I'm going to still believe in him, but still I expect him to get it done. I mean, just like earlier in my career with Stillman there struggled a little bit. And then, you know, what I had to do is I had to be patient with him and say, okay, you know what, he's going to get it. Later on down the road, he got it. And I think the same thing with Levis. I know the defense is playing lights out at times.
No, they are not.
You know, at the beginning. I'm talking about the beginning. At the beginning. I'm not talking about the beginning now. I'm not talking about the end. At the beginning of the game, they're playing lights out. And then you got your quarterback that's just making bad decisions and bad plays. You know, you do have to figure something out. We talked about this on the radio last week or last Sunday, to where it might have a situation to where you had Mariota that was struggling. You had Tannehill come in, then all of a sudden, you know, they start winning some games. I'm not calling for Rudolph. I'm not saying that. But if you start losing the fourth, the fifth game, I think you got to make another decision to maybe go with Rudolph.
Chris, what happened to the defense? Because Malik Willis stinks, and I know that for a fact. I've watched more Malik Willis than Matt LaFleur has. He's terrible. I've watched more Malik Willis than Matt LaFleur has, and Malik Willis came in here and turned into Michael Vick. That's a huge red flag. You start telling me about how the Titans have good coaches, and then I see Malik play for the other team. I see Malik play for my team, and he looks like Montel Jordan, and I see him play for their team, and he looks like Michael Jordan. That is a problem. And so what do you make of that?
You know what? This is what I'm looking at the defense. And if you look at the first two games they played with the Chicago Bears and the Jets, I'm not talking about the last game, the defense starts off fast. I mean, they're looking good. They're putting pressure on the quarterback. They're shutting down the wide receivers. But here's the thing that I see them struggling with when you get to the third and fourth quarter. The tackling is poor. I mean, the tackling is bad. I mean, they're missing tackles. They're not getting to the quarterback. They're not doing the things that they did in the first or second quarter. So I think if they can just put a full game together, I think this defense can be pretty good. I mean, you got the players. I know you're gonna jump me when I get this. Is Jeffrey Simmons? Yes, he needs to step up and make some more plays. But if those guys can put together a full game, I think this defense can do a little something.
Chris, I have a very strong opinion, and I want to get this out, and then I want your opinion of it, and I want to know if I'm being too harsh. I think the biggest problem the Titans have is I think they got a bunch of losers on their team right now. They got a bunch of guys that don't really – I don't think it kills them not to win. And I think that, again, like – I don't think some of the things Jeffrey Simmons says, I don't think Eddie George says those things.
Right.
And I don't think some of the things Will Levis says, I don't think that Ryan Tannehill says those things. And I know Derrick Henry was a winner, and I know Kevin Byard was a winner. And I know, even though he could be a real a-hole, Mike Vrabel was a winner. And I hear some of the things that are said by the coaches and the players of this team, and I think they got too many the ball didn't bounce our way losers. And I think that's a big problem this team has. Your thoughts?
I'm not going to say losers, and I'm going to give you a perfect example. And I kind of know what you're talking about. This is how you know a guy's a winner or a loser. If we just lost a tough game, just like last week, they lost a tough game, and you walk off the field and guys are smiling and laughing and joking and then going to their cars and talking on their phones and act like nothing is happening. Those are losers. But if you have a guy that loses a game and is pissed off and getting mad, not mad and throwing chairs and everything, say, listen, I got to get it done. We got to get it done. Let's go in the meeting and figure this out. Those are winners. I can't call them losers. I don't really know what goes on in the locker room. I don't really know what goes on, on the field. In practice. But you're looking at a team that's 0-3. Just because they're 0-3 doesn't, and I'm saying this in a respectful way, it doesn't make them losers. They just happen to lose 3 games. So I'm looking at the body language of my players. If I had a player like Derek Mason, if Derek Mason lost a game, D Mason's gonna be pissed. He's gonna be like, man, I'm gonna figure out a way to get it done. He's a winner though, even though we lost. But if you have guys that are walking off the field, smiling and laughing, and act like it doesn't care, then that's when they're a loser.
Chris Sanders, as always, on our program, presented by Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning. Chris, we will see you Sunday morning.
All right, appreciate you, brother.
Sunday morning. Monday night.
Monday.
What's that?
Hey.
What's the matter with me today?
Are you still? I think it's because you forgot that Jeffrey Simmons got a sack this week. It kind of gave you amnesia.
Yeah. Malik scrambled and lost a yard. They gave him a sack. Congratulations. Way to go, Jeff. Yeah. No, go ahead and call me JT. For my you can. Chris, great stuff. Appreciate you.
Appreciate you, brother. Thanks, man.
Chris Sanders joining us on the program Monday night for the award-winning pregame show. Tune into 93.3 Totally Hits Nashville this Saturday for MTSU football. The Blue Raiders will take on Memphis on the road. Pregame starts at 5 o'clock, kickoff at 6:30. MTSU coverage on 93.3 Totally Hits Nashville is presented by Sloan's Motorcycle ATV. Coming up next on the program, when is it time to bench Will Levis? By the way, Ian, did you hear Chris right there saying, he's getting there to pull the plug time? So when should the Titans bench Will Levis? Surely they shouldn't let him go out and turn the football over 3 times a game for the next 10 years. So at some point, you got to make a decision. When is it? I think it depends on what your goals are. We'll get to that next. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106 for the game. Stillman and Company, 1025, 1063, The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook Live. We are live from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios. And again, when I asked Chris Sanders, how long until you pull the plug on Levis, I was expecting Chris to say something like, why would you do that? Remember before the draft when I asked Chris, would you be interested in Brock Bowers? And Chris was like, why would you even think about Brock Bowers when you've got Chig Okonkwo? And I was like, what? Chig? I was like, again, Brock Bowers, Chig. But Chris, he loves the Titans and he defends it. And when he said, I think if they lose this game, I might have to think about it, I was like, damn. So a lot of people want to ask this question. And I think some people are afraid to ask it or afraid to talk about it because it almost feels unfathomable that we could be talking 3 weeks into the season about benching the quarterback. But have you watched the first 3 games? So if you were to say, Jared, when is it time to bench Will Levis? My answer to you is, well, it depends on what your goals are. Because I see there being options. And each choice, each option that you have is based upon what you really want the end result to be. So here's option 1. Ian, can I get my numbers 1, 2, and 3 here? Here is what I would say is option number 1, which I think is the option that they're on. I'm not saying it's what I'm on, but it's option number 1.
Number 1.
I want to give Will Levis every single possible chance to prove to me whether or not he's a franchise quarterback. Period. What decision you make based upon that is he starts. There's no reason to pull him out, and you keep him in there no matter how many dumb things he does, no matter how many pick sixes. You have to get Kurt Warner to explain as to why it's not his fault, only to have everybody else who played also say that that's wrong. No matter how much you got to have of that, you play him until he just puts you at a point where there is no chance for hope. Whenever that time comes for you, maybe for some of you, it's more than this year. Maybe it's, hey, it's not his fault they don't have a right tackle, so let's get him a right tackle and see what he can do next year. I don't know. I feel pretty certain that Levis will never be a good decision maker, and I feel pretty certain he's not a franchise quarterback. But again, I'm just telling you what to do based upon what your options are. If your first option is, hey, I want to give Levis every opportunity, period, then he starts. Because if you bench him, you're done. I know Carolina says they're not done. They're done. They're done. So if you bench him, you're done with the hope that he's a franchise quarterback. If you're not ready to give up that hope, then he starts. Option number 2.
Number 2.
I want us to have the best chance to win every week. Then the decision is Mason Rudolph starts against Miami. I don't think, and again, before we put numbers or data or whatever you want to call it, before we get to that, I don't think you can argue that right now Mason Rudolph, who did not throw an interception in 4 starts last year for Pittsburgh, I don't think you can argue that Mason Rudolph doesn't give you a better chance to win right now simply because he could protect the football better than Levis is right now. According to Pro Football Focus, Mason Rudolph in his career averages 1.6 turnover-worthy plays per 39 dropbacks. And the reason I picked 39 dropbacks is because through the first 3 games, the Titans are averaging 39 dropbacks. So if you drop back 39 times to pass, which I don't think you would do if Mason Rudolph was your quarterback, but again, according to Pro Football Focus, he averages 1.6 turnover-worthy plays per those 39 dropbacks. Now, how many turnover-worthy plays turn into turnovers? It's not 1 for 1. So he's throwing 1.5 passes a game that can be turned over. Will Levis turns the ball over 3 times a game. He turns it over. I'm sorry. He turns the ball over 3 times a game. whether it is comically stupid, like Chicago and the Jets rolling the ball on the ground or the death pick, whether it's into the game stuff like at Chicago or last week against Green Bay, whether it's Traylon Burks' fault against the Jets, or whether it's Latham or PT's fault in protection, he turns the ball over 3 times a game. Mason Rudolph is not going to turn the ball over 3 times a game. Last year, in 4 starts, again, according to PFF, Mason Rudolph had 3 turnover-worthy plays on 83 dropbacks. He also did not throw an interception. Again, Will Levis has more talent. And again, while I don't think Will Levis is going to develop into a starting quarterback, I at least leave open the possibility that, hey, crazy things happen in this league. Mason Rudolph, at this point in his career, is never going to develop into a starting quarterback. He's just not. So Levis has more talent. But again, Levis has made more bad plays than good this year, and that's why Rudolph gives you the best chance to win a game right now. So if you're saying, hey, I want to win as many games as possible. You know, Trevor came on yesterday and was talking about at some point the coaches are going to pull him because the coaches are going to want to win the games. And I'm like, does winning the games at this point, does it actually matter? And I mean, it was like when I said that, Trevor was like, of course it matters. Which takes us to option number 3.
Number 3.
If you say to me, I want to tank, this is where it kind of gets complicated, right? Because again, I really don't think there's much of an argument that if you want to turn over every stone to make sure Will Levis ain't the guy before you pull the plug, then you know Levis stays. If you want to win the Miami game, and the most important thing for you is that you win the Miami game, you play Rudolph. I don't think there's much of an argument there. Ian, do you argue with that idea that if I want to win on Monday, I've got a better shot of doing it with Rudolph?
I think that's fair.
Okay. So those are easy. If you want to tank, here's what I think you do. I think you stay with Levis, but you start to do things behind the scenes. And the first thing you would do behind the scenes is you would bring somebody else in to be a practice squad developmental quarterback. The Titans currently don't have a practice squad quarterback, but let's say they brought in somebody terrible. Off the top of my head, Jack Plummer, I believe, is on the practice squad in Carolina. I know Jack Plummer's terrible because last year he was the quarterback at Louisville, and he was horrible. So let's say you're the Titans and you decide, you know what, Mason Rudolph's on a 1-year deal. We want to develop a young backup. And again, I'm not saying this is what you're actually thinking. This is what you're saying publicly. So we signed Jack Plummer off Carolina's practice squad to be our 3rd quarterback because we want to see if we can develop a young guy to potentially be our future backup. Wink, wink. Couple of weeks on the practice squad or a couple of weeks as a developmental player in practice. And then all of a sudden at 0-8 or something like that, you say, we want to see what we have in Jack Plummer. And you stick him out there. Because I know Jack Plummer will lose. I think Levis will lose. I think Rudolph will win too many games if he's the quarterback. But if you're trying to tank, and before you tell me, Floyd, that teams in the NFL don't tank, guess what Brian Callahan's Bengals did in 2019? Yeah, midway through the year, they looked at their team and they said, you know, we're going to bench Andy Dalton. And they started Ryan Finley, a rookie from NC State, because they had to see what they had. He was terrible, lost all 3 games. They drafted Joe Burrow, and you know the rest. So if you think it's crazy that a team would do that, just know your coach did that at his last stop. So those are your 3 choices. You want to give Levis every crack at it as to whether or not he's going to be the guy, then you keep him in there and you prop him up and you hope things get better. You tell yourself bullcrap that's not really true. Like, well, you know, he didn't make any terrible mistakes this week. I mean, I know it was a pick 6, but let's just give their guy credit. Let's not blame our guy. you do that. If you want to win, you play the other guy. And if you want to tank, you stick with Levis, but you go find a quarterback worse than Levis, and then ultimately you put him in there and you lose. Those are the choices. I don't know where you guys stand on this, which one of those three you are, but you're one of those three, and whichever one you are, then again, the corresponding action should be taking place. If you're somebody who wants to tank and you want to be terrible, you don't want Mason Rudolph in there. If you're somebody who's tired of losing and being the worst team in the league, or you're a coach and you think you might get fired, or you might be that kind of guy, if that's the case, then you play Rudolph. But to me, it's as simple as that. 615-737-1025, which is our phone number, 615-737-1025. We'll get to some of your phones on this, but the Titans are convinced right now Levis is their guy. Everything they say about Levis, positive, positive, positive. Everything Levis says, positive. Remember the whole, I know I have what it takes to be a great quarterback in this league. Great quarterbacks don't throw touchdowns to the other team, but that's okay. But I'm wondering if maybe a change in philosophy could help Will Levis. I'll explain. We'll get to that next. 615-737-1025, which is our phone number. Speaking of Chris Sanders, join Chris Sanders, D. Mason, and I at Twin Peaks in Madison, 2151 Gallatin Pike North, for Monday Night Football's edition of the award-winning pregame show from 4 to 6 p.m. We'll break down the Titans and the Dolphins. The award-winning pregame show is presented by Parman Tractor and Equipment, Sundeck Nashville, Sloan's Motorcycle ATV, and award-winning Blue Note Juke Joint and Blue Note Crossroads Bourbon.
deal with the strain of wanting to give Will patience, needing to give Will patience, any young quarterback to grow, and needing to win games?
It's a delicate balance because it's still at the end of the day a business that we're all involved in that is production based, and we haven't produced enough yet at any point, and you still have to take that with a grain of salt because there are things that we do have to get better at and that aren't immediate. But I'd say there's an urgency. There's an urgency to get the things fixed that need to be fixed and make improvements fast. And again, I think that's what makes teams good in this league is how quickly you can fix an issue and how urgent you are to get it done. And you only got 17 weeks to get it all done. And so that's our goal is to fix as much as we can fix as fast as possible.
That was Brian Callahan basically saying, like, yeah, we got to start winning. Like, I know it's going to take time to develop a young quarterback. I know it's going to take time to put the offense in there. I know we need to start winning. He knows it. Again, it's a production business, as he said. So I have a suggestion, if I may. And I don't know Will Levis that well. I mean, again, I sat down with him at the Super Bowl, and I think he's a good kid. But at the same time, I also kind of felt like, maybe he was a little too wired, might be the right way to say that. Regardless, here's my suggestion to the Titans, because their way's not working. And as Chris Sanders says on the pregame show, if you keep putting on the same record, you're going to keep hearing the same song. So here's my suggestion. Maybe instead of all this patronizing they do of him, maybe they should give him some tough love. Have you heard every single press conference is we believe in Levis, and Levis isn't that bad. And yeah, that was a bad decision, but Levis is going to show you. And I mean, it's gotten so bad that after the Green Bay game, after Matt LaFleur took your third string quarterback who stinks and made him look like Michael Vick, Brian Callahan, with a straight face, got up in front of everybody and said the reason that Will Levis threw a terrible pick six is because their player was good. Whereas D. Mace and Trevor are like, yeah, no, he should have never thrown that ball. He should have never thrown it. But again, this has kind of been the problem since Mike Vrabel got fired, which is everybody talks up the quarterback. The owner, when she did her propaganda interview with Mike Keith, said, we've got a good young quarterback. The coach sat down with Taylor Lewan and the Bussin' with the Boys, and he said, I believe in Will Levis. That's a big part of why I took this job, because I believe in Levis. Levis threw an interception against the Seahawks in training camp, and I said to Brian Callahan, how concerned are you about that? He said, no, we got plenty of time. Levis makes mistakes that cost you the Chicago game. Callahan actually shows you a little personality, a little reality by sitting there and saying, like, I was surprised that he went out there and did the stupidest thing possible to hurt us, but then quickly walked it back. Then after the Jets game, well, outside of the dumb thing, everything he did was good. Then this week, the bad thing he did really wasn't that bad, and he's still doing well. What's next week going to be? What's the next disaster going to be? Actually, it's a good thing that he gave away 14 points this week. That's the next step. DeAndre Hopkins, I heard him talking to TD, and the cut that DeAndre Hopkins was like, I mean, he's a good quarterback. I know football. Unlike some of these other people, I know football, and I know Will Levis is a good quarterback. Well, I don't think that's working, right? Everybody gets up there, kisses his ass. He goes out on Sunday. He plays terribly. So why not try the other way? Why not challenge the young quarterback? Again, adversity reveals character, what you're really made of. So instead of, it's okay, Will, that you suck so bad, how about getting up there at the podium and saying, you know what, that's unacceptable, and if it happens again, he's coming out. How about that? How about players in the locker room demanding more? and saying, hey, we need more out of the quarterback. Everybody can do more to help us win, but we need more out of the quarterback. Where's that? Why not try it? Again, I know, well, you don't want to hurt the quarterback's feelings because you hurt the quarterback's feelings, and that's what leads to Tom Brady not wanting to be back in New England and taking his talents to Tampa Bay. But I'm not really worried about that with Will Levis. I'm worried about the fact that Will Levis might not be any good. So again, if you want to uncover every stone just to see if there's a chance that there is a button that you could press that could get him out of what we've seen the first 3 weeks, my guess would be do the opposite of what you're doing now. Maybe hold him accountable at least a little bit. Not, oh no, it's a good thing you threw that pick 6. I don't think that's a good idea because it ain't working right now. Phone lines are driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, 615-737-1025. One texter says, this team has no accountability. Levis says we instead of I. Jeffrey Simmons thinks he's the best player in the league, and he has cost the team damn near 2 games, and he doesn't even think he is a problem. Let me say this. I said it to Chris Sanders, and I'll say it again, and I mean this with all due respect, just from the outside looking in. Right now, I'm trying to figure out who on this team's a winner. Because I know Derrick Henry and Kevin Byard, even when these teams didn't win, I knew those guys were winners. I'm trying to figure out who on this team is a winner. Is Jeffrey Simmons a winner? Or is Jeffrey Simmons a look how much money I have, look at my truck, everybody tell me I'm great, I'm going to be mad at Buck because he said something on social media? Is he a winner? Or does he care about stupid crap? With Levis, is he a winner or is he a mayonnaise pitch man? Which one is it? And I'm trying to find some winners. You know, like I think Tony Pollard's a winner, but I don't know that. So when you say no accountability, I'll put it to you that way, is I want to see some guys who are winners. One texter says, who is the leader of this team? There is no leadership on this team. We need somebody to have a players-only meeting. Well, they told you who the captains are. Levis, Simmons, Murray, Morgan Cox, and Lloyd Cushenberry. Which, by the way, that sounded too good to be true. That it's the middle linebacker, the defensive tackle, the center, the quarterback, and the long snap. Everybody right down the middle. Those are our captains. I mean, maybe that's who leads the team. I don't know. I can tell you this right now. There ain't a Derrick Henry there, and it shows. There's not a Derrick Henry there. One texter says, we don't need a Hugh Freeze situation. What is the Hugh Freeze situation? By the way, I had to Google the other day who Auburn's coach was.
It's Hugh Freeze.
Which I was like, who is Auburn's coach? Because I'm like, I know Brian Harsin got fired, but I know it's bad. It's always bad at Auburn. Auburn's like the Titans. Bad leadership at the top, and it's always going to be a problem unless they hire Jesus to be the coach, and then he can kind of transcend all of that. But I don't know what the situation at quarterback at Auburn is. Win some games, and then I'll pay attention to it. 615-737-1025 is our phone number, 615-737-1025 here on the program. One texter says, I'm trying not to be a smart ass. I genuinely want to know, what do you want the Titans to do as of right now? That's a question. I'll get to the answer next. Stillman and Company, 615-737-1025, 1025, 106 for the game.
I know you and the team can't really ask for patience, but Brian has talked about the need for patience with certain elements of things. How do you kind of balance that?
Yeah, like we want to come out firing and be 3-0 and get this thing started and rolling. And the reality is, like, sometimes it takes a little bit for a new team and a new staff, and then just everybody to feel each other and get into the rhythm that they know that they can achieve. So we're still on that path, and I just can't wait till we get there, because I know it's going to be soon.
I just said to Ian, I'm like, Will Levis sitting there talking about, it does take time for a new staff and a new scheme and everybody. He's talking about this like he's Floyd, like he's got experience and he knows
beyond
how to
his
get
years. Yes, wise beyond his
I mean,
years.
good God. Like, goodness gracious. So one text said, okay, Jared, you've laid out the three options with Levis. If you want to uncover every stone just to make sure that he can't be the guy, kind of the way you did with Mariota, then Levis stays in at quarterback. If you want to win against Miami, you put Rudolph in. If you want to tank, I say you keep Levis in and you start planning a plan B so that Rudolph never has to go in, and you can go put somebody who's even worse in the games. Boy, Malik, I would have thought would have been perfect until I saw him turn into Randall Cunningham this week. But that kind of guy, and you get see what we have in Jack Plummer and lose all the games and tank for, I don't know, Ewers or Cam Ward or whoever. And somebody said, so what do you want the Titans to do? And I don't really have an answer per se. Like, I mean, I don't know how many more times I can watch Levis turn the ball over for touchdowns for the other team. But I would stick with Levis, and I'd really ride this thing out. I'd really, really stick with Levis, and I'd let Levis really stink it up, and I'd let it be bad. But again, my job's not on the line if that happens. And that's where I do wonder. I remember last year when they came out and they said Vrabel was going to be the coach no matter what in 2024. And I said, I don't believe that, because the Titans always lie and change their mind. And I'll be damned, the Titans either change their mind or they lied. But the point being was, I'm like, it's a long 5 weeks. In the offseason, everybody can get these narratives stuck in their head and decide, Levis is going to show this year he's going to be the guy. And that can carry you for the 24 weeks or the 26 weeks or however long the offseason is, the 30 weeks of the offseason. That one narrative can carry you. But when you play a game every week, these next 14 weeks or whatever, it's a long 14 weeks of losing. But I just don't see the upside in playing Mason Rudolph and winning some winnable games. So I'd stick with Levis. I mean, to me, you lose either way, but I think I'd rather lose more now. And then the Titans maybe can enact some other changes that they need to make to be successful, and maybe get a pick that can be a star quarterback. That's what I would do. That's what I want to see happen, if that answers your question. Let's go to Roy, who's been waiting patiently and is up next on the quarterback. Roy, go ahead.
Oh, man, that Auburn thing got me earlier. I'm an Auburn fan, so I know exactly what you're talking about there. I mean, they don't know if it's Peyton Thorne or Hank Brown coming in there. And being a Titans fan and Auburn fan, it's just, my weekends are just pure hell. So with the Levis thing, just curious, I kind of agree with you there. I mean, if you're going to just know what you got there and you just know your season's pretty much done, just stick with him. But how long is it going to be? And the backup quarterback's always a fan's number one player to root for. How much longer do we have to endure this before they make a change? And also, on the running back situation, I don't know if the reports are true. Maybe you can speak on this. Did they try out some other running backs here the other day? I read something about James Robinson and Isaiah Spiller. Is there something going on with Isaiah Spears? I'll hang up and listen.
Yeah, they brought in some running backs to work out. I have no idea if anything's going on with Spears. I mean, they don't use Spears anyway, so who cares? I mean, like, I got to tell you, it's funny. It's like, yeah, how much longer can we go on with the quarterback? And I guess I'm okay with tanking, but what about the backup running back, Jared? I do think that's kind of funny. Let me say this about the quarterback, how long this can go on. I think this can go on until Amy can't watch it anymore. That's how long I think it can go on for. Where at some point, if she says, okay, I can't watch this anymore, then you have to do what the owner says. I mean, if Amy says like, hey, we dedicated this year to him and he's going to play, and if he's going to be the one that gets us the number 1 pick, then so be it. Then I guess he stays in. I don't know. Derek and Trevor and Chris, they all kind of hint at the idea of him eventually losing the team if he doesn't make a quarterback switch. So, I mean, again, in Carolina, it went on as long as it could until the owner said, I don't want to watch this anymore. And I think that would be the same way here. For me, like I will tell you, there are two different thoughts. If I'm the coach as compared to somebody who wants big picture, the best thing for the Titans, which might be the highest draft choice. And what I would say is, if I'm the coach, I think I probably would have taken Will Levis out if he had made another pick 6 level mistake against Green Bay on Sunday. That's probably when I would have pulled the plug as the coach.
In the middle of the game.
Yeah. Like, I think if I had sent him back out there and he threw another interception in Green Bay, I think I'd have taken him out.
Yeah.
And so, but again, that's me if I'm the coach. If I'm the coach and if I, what I want as a fan are two totally different things. Because I can tell you, the coach don't want tank. Like, the coach wants them to go win Monday night and turn this season around. I'm not sure I want that. Because what does that do for me? Beating the Dolphins. And again, I thought it mattered last year when it was like, hey, let's set the foundation for Levis and let's get confidence in him and let's believe and now I'm not so sure I believe that. Kyle is up next on our program. Kyle, thank you for waiting. Go ahead.
Oh, Jared, where to start, man?
We'll start somewhere.
This team is driving me crazy. It's one thing to lose every week, but when you're beating yourself, it makes me want to just bang my head into the wall. Would you consider moving Dylan Radins to right tackle and Brunskill to guard? Just because, our line is pathetic. We can't do anything. It's pissing me off. We can't even find out if Will's any good. Right now, my guess is Will sucks. And you know me, I preached Will all summer long and everything, and now I'm looking like a freaking idiot. Defense, giving up everything. I don't know, man. And I guess one of the bright sides is D-Hop seems to be coming along, getting healthier, and that's his go-to. But it looks pretty hopeless right now, man.
So you want them to win on Monday night?
Yeah, I want them to win.
Okay.
I'm not a tanker, man. I don't believe in that. It's not my DNA.
Okay. Thank you for your call, Kyle. So I do think that they need to make changes to the offensive line that are not. Let's give Jalen Duncan a try. Because I've already seen them give Jalen Duncan a try. I've seen them give Jalen Duncan multiple tries. Jalen Duncan is worse than PT. Like, I want everybody to understand that. Jalen Duncan last year went in for Andre Dillard because Mike Vrabel couldn't watch Andre Dillard anymore, and Andre Dillard was better than Jalen Duncan. And PT is better than Jalen Duncan. And PT's terrible. What did Trevor say yesterday about PT? He said, I am no longer convinced he can play in the NFL, is what Trevor said yesterday. That's Trevor. So I thought the whole thing was stupid from the jump when they kept telling people, no, we think PT and Duncan can do it. And I'm like, no, they cannot. They can't do it. Don't do it. And you guys said, Bill Callahan will fix it. And I'm like, I've seen PT. I know he can't do it. So again, you're talking about what to do at right tackle. Ian, did I not beg and plead and scream like, hey, if you're not going to go get a right tackle, then play Radins there because he was the best one they had last year?
I think it was brought up.
And you know what they said to me? Bill Callahan doesn't think that Radins can play right tackle. So, to be completely blunt with you, what I would do is I'd put Brunskill at right tackle. Because if Brunskill's not fat enough to play guard, which apparently is the problem, there can't be another problem. I think Brunskill right now is probably a better left guard than Skoronski, who's awful. but I would put Brunskill at right tackle. He's played right tackle before, albeit probably not very well, but it can't be worse than PT and Duncan. It can't be worse. But before, that's what I would do. But who am I? What experience do I have? Whereas Bill Callahan is the one that thinks that PT and Duncan are the answer at right tackle. So what do I know? And what does Kyle know? And what does everybody know when, again, Brian Callahan thinks you only need one tackle anyways in this league, and Bill Callahan doesn't think Radens can play right tackle and doesn't think Brunskill can play right guard and thinks that these crap bum Scarbinis they have out there that were crap bum Scarbinis under Mike Vrabel are going to be better, and they're learning the hard way. They ain't. 615-737-1025 is the phone number, 615-737-1025 here on our program. If you want to weigh in, let's take a Titan breather for a second. So we'll get back to the Titans at 4 o'clock because Brian Callahan said something today that if I tell you what he said, you will know that this shoots right up my keister. Ian, have you seen this NIL story out of UNLV?
I heard Chase and Big Joe talking about it some this morning.
Holy freaking crap. We have got to get to this. We'll do that next. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Let's talk Window Nation. I love Window Nation. Did you know most of your home's cold AC this summer leaked out through your old windows? That's right. So with the nice weather coming in the fall, it's a great time to replace them with energy-efficient ones that save money on heat this winter. That's why I'm telling you to call Window Nation. Again, I went to the mailbox today, and I think I had one meaningful thing that was in the mailbox. And I get my mail like once a week. And there was one meaningful thing that was in the mailbox. It was all this plastic and, get with us to fix your windows. Get with this company with this great Window Nation. I know them. I know the people that run Window Nation. I know the people here, the experts that will show up at your home with Window Nation. Those are reliable, trustable people. So that's who I use. That's Window Nation. And right now, buy 2 windows, you'll get 2 windows free. There's no limit on how much you can save. And you can save even more with 0 down, no interest or payments for 24 months. Again, buy 2 windows, you'll get 2 windows free. No interest, no payments, 24 months, 0 down. Boom. How do you like that? Give them a call right now at 866-90-NATION or visit windownation.com. That's 866-90-NATION, windownation.com.
What's the latest you can tell us about this developing story?
Well, Victoria, it's a really fascinating moment in time for college athletics, and it's a little peek into the Byzantine way that these college athletes are paid through the current NCAA system. So I was told this morning by Matthew Sluka's agent, Marcus Cromartie of Equity Sports, that Sluka agreed to go to UNLV because of a $100,000 verbal offer from a UNLV assistant coach. Now, that's a pretty standard offer for a quarterback of his caliber at a Group of 5 school. It's nothing outlandish. And Cromartie was clear to tell me that Sluka had much bigger offers at bigger schools, but they chose UNLV from the situation. So the story goes, as Sluka said in his tweet, he did not start to get payments on what he was expected. Now, that offer was never formalized through UNLV's collective. A representative of that collective told our Dan Murphy today that he never saw this deal, essentially, that this $100,000 was only done verbally, and that's where the ambiguity around this lies.
So that's the story from Pete Thamel. Again, Matthew Sluka, who I had never heard of in my entire life until this morning, the UNLV quarterback. It came out this morning that UNLV's quarterback 3 games into the season just said, goodbye, UNLV. In the middle of the year, just quit. Said, I'm not interested in playing anymore. And it came out that he was upset that the UNLV wasn't meeting the deal that they had made as far as NIL was concerned. Then it came out that UNLV had met every requirement that they had agreed to with Sluka. And then what happened was they won the first 3 games, and an agent told Sluka, you're worth way more money than that. And he went to them, a la T.O. with the Eagles, and he said, I want more money because I think I'm worth more than that. UNLV said no. He said, see ya. And so now sides are being taken here on social media about how dare they this and how dare they that. By the way, I had to chide one of my friends. She's the women's basketball coach at UNLV. She actually used to be an assistant coach at Belmont.
What'd she have to do with all this?
Well, I texted her this morning. I said, hey.
You leave her out of it.
I texted her. I said, well, we don't pay our players anymore? Like, what are we doing? 5 years ago, I would have texted her and said, what are we paying players now? Now I'm saying, what, we don't pay our players? So, again, according to sources, UNLV paid the kid. He went 3-0, and now he wants more money. That ungrateful college student. According to other sources, the kid was promised $100,000, didn't get it, and he's basically decided to withhold his services. Let me just say this. I don't know who to believe, so I don't know who's right and who's wrong. But here's what I think they should do. I'm going to solve this problem for UNLV. And I saw UNLV put out some kind of release about how we don't believe in pay for play and it's against Nevada state law and we don't. Shut up. Shut up. The Supreme Court and every other court has said you can pay the players. UT is implementing a 10% ticket tax in order to pay the players. So just when it comes to we would never, shut up. So that's my first thing. My second thing is this. I think they should go on Judy Justice. Ian, are you familiar with Judy Justice?
I don't think so.
So a couple years ago, Judge Judith Scheinlin, you may know her as Judge Judy.
I've heard of her.
Judge Judith Scheinlin decided to end her tenure with CBS. Now, she sold back the catalog of all of her shows, the Judge Judy shows, so they can still run in syndication. She made like $200 million selling the catalog of Judge Judy shows. So if you see a Judge Judy show airing in syndication, that show was recorded in like 2021. Like Jared and the GM was still around when Judge Judy was on TV. Judge Judy has signed a contract. She's with Freevee, which is Amazon's, like if you got a Fire Stick, it's that free TV, those just bullcrap channels that are terrible. So Judge Judy is on that, and it's called Judy Justice. So here's what I think they should do. I think UNLV and Matthew Sluka, I got his name right?
I think so.
They should go on Judy Justice. Because most of you probably didn't even know that Judge Judy was now on Amazon and that it was now called Judy Justice. But if you took the biggest he said, she said of college football and stuck it on Judy Justice, most of you would probably watch. And the brand awareness for Judge Judy's new program on Amazon, I think would go through the roof. Because again, I think most people think when they're flipping through the channels and they see Judge Judy sitting up there in her black robe, she wears a pink robe on Judy Justice, but they see her in this black robe and she goes, Madam, or do I have stupid written across my forehead? You think that happened last week? That happened 4 years ago. So I think this would bring great brand awareness to Judy Justice. And because of that, I think Judy Justice, Amazon, they would pay in order to get this high-profile case heard on Judge Judy. Again, the people are real. The cases are real. The rulings are final. And so get them into Judge Judy, and then let's lay it out. Take out the cell phones. Show us the text messages. Show us who said what. Let's let Judge Judy decide, and then they can use the money that they get for going on Judge Judy, or I should say Judy Justice. They can use the money to pay the kid. So it's like, hey, we told everybody you were a liar. We were proven right in court. Now here's $100,000 because they put us on Judge Judy. So here's $100,000 for you. Like that's how I would operate this UNLV thing. But this idea that, I mean, like that I would have an opinion as to who's telling the truth here. How would I know who's telling the truth? How would I know? His agent says he was promised money and he didn't get it. Well, if that's true, then I'm on his side. But UNLV says we gave him all the money and he still wants more money. Well, if that's true, then I'm on their side. But again, that's the way that this works. I need to see some evidence. I need to see the truth. And then once you give me the truth, then I can decide who's right, who's wrong. Matt from Camden asks, how the hell do you know so much about Judge Judy? Well, my mom's a Judge Judy fan, so that's for starters. But I mean, I don't know about you guys. Like, I find Judge Judy to be fascinating. Chris Sanders thinks she's sexy. I won't go that far.
Chris Sanders loves Judge Judy.
He loves Judge Judy. I won't go that far with Judge Judy, but I will say this. Like, I find the Judge Judy career arc to just be insanely fascinating. Supposedly, the way Judge Judy would negotiate her contract with CBS is she would write them an envelope what she wanted, and that they had to give it to her. It like wasn't a threat that if you don't give me what I'm asking for, I'm going somewhere else and getting it. It was reality. So like basically Judge Judy told CBS, this is what I think is fair. And if you don't pay it to me, I'm going somewhere else. And that for years, they just, every time she did it, they'd say, okay, Judge, here you go. Plus, like, I don't agree with everything that Judge Judy said, but I think she's got a good head on her shoulders. You know? I think Judge Judy would get to the bottom of this. And again, the cases are real. The people are real. And the rulings are final. Daniel is up next. Daniel, thank you for calling. Go ahead.
Yeah, man. I just think that they, given the fact that, all these players are getting paid through different portals and things, there would probably be an easy way to figure out if they paid them or not. I don't think this is a mystery.
Well, again, what's being said is UNLV saying, we didn't agree to this. And he's saying, yes, you did. You have that. Thank you, Daniel. They're saying, yes, you did. Your assistant coach offered me $100,000. Where's my $100,000? You know what I'm a little surprised by? They're 3-0. And I don't know how much the UNLV head coach makes for football, but I have to believe it's over $1 million, right? Like, you're the UNLV coach. Wouldn't you just pay $100,000 out of your pocket to make this go away? Like, again, maybe I'm crazy. I don't know, but wouldn't you just, okay, fine. Like, it's the starting quarterback. 615-737-1025. Brian Callahan said something today that if you heard him say this, and you knew me, you would know this is a non-starter. If I was interviewing him for a job and he said this, I wouldn't hire him. And he said it today. We'll get to it next. Stillman and Company right here, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook Live. We are live from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios. You know what's funny is every now and then somebody gets mad at me and they say something like, if you're so smart, why don't you go be a GM? If you're so smart, why don't you be head coach? And I have to ask you these questions of, do you really think these guys that are general managers and head coaches are that smart? Like, I understand it's a glorious position and it pays a lot of money, but do you think these guys are geniuses? Every single one of them? In fact, years ago, we were going to the combine and I asked Floyd, those were always the most fun, were the driving trips where we got to shoot the breeze and everything else. And especially if it was late at night and he'd get tired and then he'd start letting things fly, like things about him and Jeff Fisher and things about him and Bud Adams and, the good stuff. But I asked him one time, I said, Floyd, how long would it take if I were to dedicate my life to football? How long would it take for somebody like you to teach me, hey, okay, if we're scouting guards, this is what we're looking for. If we're scouting tackles, this is what we're looking for, before you'd be ready to send me off on the road to go scout college football? And I figured he was going to say something like, ha ha! Treat it like I was asking him if I could play quarterback or something. And, oh God, no. Oh, ha ha. He looked at me, he goes, no, year and a half. I said, really? He said, yeah. Again, it ain't that complicated. And I will say this, I think it was an honor to do the show with him every day. And I don't want to speak for Ian, but I think that we had an education football-wise through all the different things that happened over the years, covering the Titans and covering football and covering the SEC and everything else. We had, such an experience every day for 4 hours. I was talking to my dad about it over the weekend. I said, my best friend is a doctor. After college, he went to medical school. I feel like I went to football school, where, again, it was 20 hours a week of nonstop football talk and evaluations and, what does a GM do here and what's important there and all those kind of things. Again, it doesn't make me think that I'm smarter or that I'm more educated than the guys running the Titans, but I'd like to say that I have a much better understanding of how all of this works than I would have if I wasn't with the guy who has the record for the most wins in franchise history every single day for 5 years. So today, Brian Callahan was at the podium talking about this week's game against the Miami Dolphins. And of course, we know he benched his starting right tackle on Sunday, Nicholas Petit-Frere, a.k.a.
PT.
We know he benched PT on Sunday and that maybe Jalen Duncan goes in there. We also know that Jalen Duncan, like PT, stinks. And Brian Callahan was asked what I thought was a very odd question, but his answer, if you know me, was alarming.
Do in the NFL with one side tackle-wise being serviceable? Can you coach around having one strong tackle?
Yeah, I think so.
Stop.
I've been in places.
If I was interviewing him for a job to be head coach and I asked that question, can you make do in the NFL with one tackle? And he said, yeah, I think you can. I would close my notebook right then and there and say, all right, Brian, thanks for coming in. We'll be in touch. That would be the end of it. That would be the end of the conversation. If the coach took the job or was applying for the job and he told me that he doesn't think you need 2 tackles, that would be the end, period. See ya. It was very nice to know you. Jimmy down the hall will take care of your flight back. We look forward to talking to you soon. Go ahead and continue the cut.
Do in the NFL with one side tackle-wise being serviceable? Can you coach around having one strong tackle?
Yeah, I think so. I've been in places where we've done it. Yes, there is a way you can help. I mean, very few people have 5 all-pro starters. Very few people have 2 tackles that are of the same calibers. Some do, but very few do. And you have to find ways to help that. I mean, you're always trying to help your weaknesses somewhere. Very few teams are complete when it comes to having everything you absolutely would want to have on a roster. And that's our job as coaches, is to find ways to, one, highlight our strengths, and two, try to find a way to minimize whatever our weaknesses are, because everybody has them. Everybody's got strengths and weaknesses on their roster, on their team, at whatever positions. And that's my job, to put guys in position to highlight those things, and then again to help where we don't have, where we consider our weaknesses might be. So yeah, it's definitely possible. I think it happens all around the league.
Oh my God. This guy's the head coach. And he thinks you only need one tackle to be successful in the NFL. And then he did what callers do, which drives me insane, which is, I don't think any team in the league has 5 all-pros on the offensive line. Right. And when the Titans were good, they didn't have 5 all-pros on the line either. But they did have 5 legitimate NFL players. Taylor Lewan, legitimate NFL player, not an all-pro. Roger Saffold, legitimate NFL player, not an all-pro. Ben Jones, legitimate NFL player, not an all-pro. Nate Davis, legitimate NFL player, not an all-pro. And Jack Conklin, who was an all-pro. Again, they didn't have 5 all-pros, but they had 5 pros. And that's the problem. Brian Callahan is trying to he thinks he's so smart that he thinks he knows more than Floyd. Because I've told the right tackle story way too many times. I don't have to tell it again. But I've told this story for the last 3 years, because whether it's John Robinson, Mike Vrabel, Rand Carthon, and now Brian Callahan, and I'm going to have to throw Bill into this too, because that a big part of probably what Brian's thinking about is probably coming from Bill. And Bill was a pretty terrible coach in the NFL, when he was head coach. And we got to bring that up, because when he was in charge of the Raiders, he was in charge of the whole team. And that first year with Gruden's players, they got to the Super Bowl, and then all of a sudden it went right down the toilet. And I think we got to keep that in mind. But this idea that Brian Callahan thinks he can get by with 1 tackle is absurd. John Robinson thought the same thing, and now he's sitting on the couch eating Cheetos. Mike Vrabel thought he could get by with no tackles last year, and now he's ripping heaters at the local pub in Cleveland, because he thought he could get away with it. And I got to tell you, again, I talk about what I call disqualifying behavior all the time, about how if somebody does something, if somebody is stupid enough to do something that is so outrageous, that is the fact that you thought that was a good idea tells me all I need to know about you. I'm worried about that with Brian Callahan when I hear that answer. Again, I asked the old man 9 years ago, just making small talk, before I had started, again, my football schooling. And I said, Floyd, Titans going to be any good this year? And he looked at me and said, and again, where I'm sitting right now, and I'm looking right here, there's an Eddie George bobblehead that's up here. This is exactly where he said this to me. He said, we don't have a right tackle. And I said, that's important, right? He said, right tackle? So I'm going to trust the guy who has 111 wins for the Oilers and the Titans. The guy who, when you go to the stadium, his name's on the wall. When you walk into the facility, his name's on the wall. When you go to the Titans house to buy your PSLs, his name's on a gold record because he has the record for most wins. So I'm going to trust what he says. And when Brian Callahan says, I've done it places where we've only had 1 tackle, I would say, well, do you have Joe Burrow at quarterback here? Because the only way that team was able to compete with that terrible offensive line they had in Cincinnati was because Joe Burrow is special. And I can tell you a lot of things about Will Levis. One of them is he ain't Joe Burrow. And what's alarming about that is not that Brian Callahan, doesn't know football or anything like that. Brian Callahan knows football. Clearly, he thinks it differently, some of the core principles. but it's the guru coach mentality. This is the one negative of the guru coach, the offensive coordinator, head coach. And that is these guys can get a little arrogant, which I don't think Brian Callahan is naturally arrogant. But again, sometimes I think these guys think that they can fix anybody. The old story is when Josh McDaniels ran off Jay Cutler in Denver. He walked into a team meeting and said, "It's okay, boys. I can turn any high schooler into an all-pro." That is what the guru coaches sometimes do. They think they can take anybody and make them into a star. And I worry about Brian Callahan because I'm sure Brian Callahan thought he could do that with Will Levis. But if you notice around the NFL, Kyle Shanahan pays up when it comes to important players in important positions. Like tackle, McCaffrey, tight end. He pays up if he thinks you're an important player. So again, I mean, Brian Callahan can say whatever he wants about, oh, we can do this with one tackle. But I would argue that your results through 3 weeks probably prove that you can't. And also, again, I know there's a lot of different ways to skin a cat, but I don't think football has changed so much that when the old man said you need to have a right tackle, I don't believe the game has changed so much that all of a sudden they've come up with a new way where you don't need a tackle. And one last thing I'll say about this. Again, David Stewart wasn't perfect, and he wasn't an all-pro. Fred Miller wasn't perfect. I mean, every now and then, Ian, he'd jump the snap count a little bit, just every now and then.
Mm-hmm.
But he was his starting right tackle in the NFL. And if you notice, when the old man was here, they always had a starting right tackle. And they always had a plan for the next starting right tackle. And we never seem to complain about the offensive line as much as we complain about the offensive line here, where apparently this coach, the last coach, Ken Wisenhunt, who tried to take a third-round guard, Jeremiah Patasi, and stick him at tackle, 3 of the last 4 coaches around here have not had any value whatsoever when it comes to right tackle. The one guy who did, Mike Mularkey, was with the Titans when they drafted a tackle 7th. And I believe that worked out pretty well. So when I hear Brian Callahan say, you only need one tackle in the NFL, boy, that scares me as much as anything that I've seen or heard from him. And that includes that stupid timeout he took to go for it on 4th down on Sunday, which was an all-time, are you a big boy making decisions, or are the fans telling you what to do? I don't want to tell the right tackle story anymore. I don't want to have to go to practice and ask about right tackle. I don't want to have to sit there in the preseason and say, guys, I don't think this right tackle is very good. I don't want to do this anymore. I don't want to have any more nightmares about right tackle. But then you got the coach up there saying it doesn't matter. Oh, God. Oh, God. We lived this. It was the Wisenhunt era. I know how that ended, too. Brian, do better. Bill, do better. 615-737-1025 is the phone number, 615-737-1025. By the way, you can say, what do you know about football? And what do you? I was right about this, wasn't I? The day the guy got hired, I sat down with him. I told him the right tackle story. Clearly, he probably was like, what's this guy? Now, plan for right tackle. We got to get to that next. 615-737-1025, which is our phone number. It's Stillman and Company. 1025-1063 The Game.
What will go into this week deciding what you do at right tackle?
We'll just see how practice goes. Again, sometimes when guys get pulled from games, it's not always necessarily means that their starting job is gone. It just means that they weren't playing very well in that game. So we'll see. We'll let them both practice. They're both going to get reps, and they might even both play. We'll see how that looks. I don't have any real definitive answer on that at the current moment, but as the week goes on, I'll have a little more clarity.
You know what I thought when I heard Brian Callahan's solution at right tackle being you know what? We'll practice them both this week. And you know what? Maybe both of them will play. We'll see how it goes. And you know what my reaction to that was when I heard it in live time?
What's that?
Because that's exactly, I don't want to put words in the old man's mouth. That's exactly what I think he would have said. I mean, come on now. So I just during the break thought about this. So Brian Callahan's playing at right tackle. Now that he knows that PT sucks, which I tried to tell you guys. They got to the combine and they said, we like some of the traits we see on tape of PT, and they called Jalen Duncan, JD. They're like, we like some of the traits we see. And I'm like, no, don't do it. Don't get sucked into the idea that you can fix this. It ain't fixable. And you guys said, Bill Callahan will fix it. I said, oh, dear God. I said, okay, good luck. And so remember Corey Curtis on the sideline? And again, all he was doing is reporting what the Titans were telling him. But Corey Curtis on the TV broadcast of the Saints preseason game saying the right side of the line was something they felt they were hopeful about. Now it's something they feel good about. Guys, back to you. And I thought, oh, God. Jalen Duncan has a career passing efficiency, according to Pro Football Focus, of 88.9. PT is 91, I think this year, 91.5%. So Duncan's career is about 3 percentage points lower than PT's. And PT this year is the single worst pass protector in the NFL. So the Titans are going to replace PT, maybe with a guy who, whether it was the game on Sunday or last year, whenever he gets to play, is worse than the worst in the league. Because last year, Andre Dillard was the worst in the league. And Andre Dillard got replaced by Jalen Duncan, and Jalen Duncan was worse than Andre Dillard. So now Brian Callahan, who doesn't think right tackle is important apparently, Brian Callahan is going to split the reps. He's got two guys who are both objectively awful. And he's going to split the reps between the two. And so, I mean, not that first of all, these guys need every rep they can get. He's going to split the reps between the two. And then he says he might play them both on Sunday. Let's see how that works out for you, Brian. Can I bet? I'm going to say not very good. By the way, you know what he's going to do, Ian. You know why he's saying all of a sudden that he's not for sure going to bench PT.
Why is that?
Because he knows Duncan sucks. Like, he knows it.
They can't rule out going back to PT.
PT starting.
Yeah.
I'm telling you right now, PT starting on Monday night. They're going to suck it up and hope it works because they know he's better than Duncan because Duncan's that bad. Gee, if there was only one person, everybody else bought all the bull crap. Bill Callahan will fix it. They could have put me at right tackle. And the people of this town that covered the team would have said, well, Bill Callahan knows. Bill Callahan knows. So the one guy, me, that said, guys, these two guys stink. Now I hear your new plan, and I think it's worse than your original plan, which I thought was horrendous. Holy crap. Woo. Oh, my God. One texter says, you need to move off of your love affair for Joe Burrow. Joe Burrow just did you see this yesterday? Apparently Shannon Sharp said Joe Burrow didn't do enough for Cincinnati to win, and Joe Burrow's offense never punted.
I did not see him say that, no.
Apparently Shannon Sharp went on TV and said Joe Burrow was the reason that they lost, and they scored 33 points and they never punted. Unbelievable. One texter says, start Radence at right tackle and then Brunskill at right guard. No, Texter, because Bill Callahan says you're not allowed to do that. Bill Callahan's not interested in that. Brian says, did you just say Jalen Junkin? Was that a Freudian slip? As I said it, I was like, probably not that far off. Skylar says, just use Duncan as a sixth lineman besides PT full-time. You want to know what's crazy? I think there's a chance that if you did that, it still would be worse than having an actual right tackle there. One texter says, disqualifying behavior. Does that include you wanting Anthony Richardson over CJ Stroud? You make a lot of good points, but you aren't a GM. Let me say this. I stand by what I felt at the time. I watched Bill Belichick and Mike Lombardi. They were doing a film breakdown. I don't know if you guys saw this on YouTube, but there was a film breakdown between the two of them where they were going over the quarterbacks in next year's draft, and they were going over Cam Ward, and they compared him to Anthony Richardson, and they pulled up the Anthony Richardson college tape. And again, I understand Belichick, bombed on Mac Jones, but again, he's Belichick. And Belichick and Lombardi are just losing their pants watching Anthony Richardson's college tape. That's how I felt. And I think that Indianapolis has completely mismanaged him. Now, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe Richardson's not smart enough to play quarterback in the league. Maybe he doesn't have the heart to play quarterback in the league. I don't know. But again, to say that Anthony Richardson wasn't a super talent defies what everybody in that league thought. And I still think there's room for Anthony Richardson at 22 years old. Somebody texted in comparing Will Levis earlier to Josh Allen, saying, well, didn't Josh Allen have a rough time at the beginning of his career? Josh Allen was 22 years old as a rookie, and he was 5-6 as a starter. So Levis has started what? He started 9 games last year. He started 3 games. So Levis has started 12 games. Allen was 5-6 as a starter. Levis is 3-9? 3-9. So again, not exactly the same. And on top of it, Josh Allen as a rookie had 12 interceptions in those, again, 12 games. Will Levis averages 3 turnovers a game right now. And when Josh Allen was 25 years old, which is Will Levis's age now, the Buffalo Bills were in the AFC title game against the Kansas City Chiefs in one of the greatest shootouts of all time. I don't think they're comparable. 615-737-1025, which is our phone number, 615-737-1025 here on our program. And again, Bill Callahan says they can do this, which I do wonder. And look, Bill Callahan's reputation across the league when it comes to being an offensive line coach is irrefutable. The guys I listen to, Polian and Spielman and those guys, again, they're all like, oh yeah, Bill Callahan is a great coach. But at some point, if Bill Callahan is the one that's saying, no, we don't need to spend $7 million on Jermaine Illuminor, if he's saying that because we have PT, then we got to reevaluate Bill Callahan's ability. 615-737-1025. More of your phones, plus the other offensive line comment from your coach today that I can't. We'll continue along. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game.
I know this O-line is still trying to find its rhythm together. With Peter Skoronski in particular, though, maybe is he at the point where you guys thought he would be, or what are those things you need to still see out of him at that left guard spot?
Yeah, I think that left side's played pretty well for us. I think there's some things in pass pro. I think early in the first game or two, he was getting more comfortable with, and I think he played decent last week. I mean, again, we haven't played well enough anywhere to feel like we're able to win the game, but I've been pleased with where he's at. He's performed well. He's going to have to keep growing and keep performing though, because it's critical to have our high pick players play at a high level. I mean, that's how you have a good football team. And right now, we just need more, like I said.
So Brian Callahan not only thinks that the Titans don't need 2 good tackles, he thinks you only need 1 good tackle. He not only thinks that, he also thinks he can split the reps for the 2 terrible players and see what happens on Monday night. But he also thinks Skoronski, who is, quite frankly, I mean, I hate to say it, he's downright atrocious right now. But he thinks he's doing a good job. I'm starting to wonder if Brian Callahan is actually watching the game tape. I'm starting to wonder if Brian Callahan, whose dad is Bill Callahan, I'm starting to wonder.
Big coach.
If, he knows anything about the offensive line.
Who, Bill or Brian?
Brian. I'm starting to wonder that.
Lost in translation somewhere?
I mean, I guess. I don't know how to do my dad's job. At least not very well. So it's inexplicable how this offensive line is as bad as it is, given the fact that everybody and their grandma knew that the biggest problem was the offensive line. Again, you guys think that I invested as much time in talking about Jermaine Illuminor this offseason because I'm some sort of expert on the Las Vegas Raiders offensive line play? No, I knew Jermaine Illuminor was an available right tackle who is healthy consistently and wasn't terrible last year. And I'm like, hey, go sign him because it's better than what you have, because I knew what you had was terrible. And they said, no. And I kept saying, hey, I can't tell you why Skoronski's terrible, but I can tell you his guy's the one who keeps getting to the quarterback. And they kept saying, no. And now here you are, week 3, and even you guys are in the text line sitting there saying, I don't know exactly how I feel about all of this. And, a lot of guys are playing like this fantasy football. Move Skoronski to right tackle and put Brunskill at left guard. They're not going to do that. Again, what I would do, and I don't really know how much credibility I deserve when it comes to talking about this, because I'm going to do it one more time. Bill Callahan. I'm not Bill Callahan. And I'm not Brian Callahan. And I don't make the kind of money that those guys make to know the kind of things that we're talking about right now. Though apparently Brian Callahan and I do vacation in the same spot. But I will say this. If I get a vote, and I have been right this entire time, I would put Brunskill at right tackle. That would be my solution. I'm going to suck it up on Skoronski, at least for a little bit longer, but I would put Brunskill at right tackle. That way I'm not moving any other pieces in the line. I would have put Radens at right tackle to begin with because he was the best of all those guys at right tackle, but that's what I would have done. One texter says, if I say Bill Callahan one more time, he's going to drive his truck straight into a concrete pylon. Let me just say this. I know how much trucks cost, and I'm not a truck guy.
They're expensive.
I'm not a, look at my F-150. I did see a commercial. I've got an e-hybrid, and I'm obsessed with charging my car. Not because of the environment or anything like that. I just love being able to be I haven't been to the gas station in a month. That's what I love. It takes gas, but, I like charging my car. I do. And I saw one of these truck commercials, and it's got this cowboy with a cowboy hat on it, and it's him with a truck, and it shows him charging his truck, and they're like, this is the longest range truck on the market at 400 miles. And I thought to myself, A, that truck must cost $1 million because I know how much a truck costs. And so now an all-electric 400-mile truck, that's got to be insanely expensive. And number two, I don't think dudes with cowboy hats are like, let me charge my car right now. I think those are the people that are like, I don't want to charge my car. I want to use gas. You do realize that if you do this, you'll never, ever have to go to the gas station again. I don't care. But again, I digress. So don't run your truck into the pylon because trucks are expensive for whatever it is. One texter said, say Prius out loud, Jared. I don't drive a Prius. And I'm not going to say what kind of car I drive, but let's just say that you can agree that it's
not a Prius. No, it's not a Prius.
It's definitely not a Prius. We'll just leave it at that for whatever that's worth. Somebody said, we know you're not a truck guy when you say, look at my F-150. Isn't an F-150 a truck?
Yeah.
I mean, I've listened to enough country music to know what the brands of trucks are. Just like I know the kinds of beers because of country music.
Our intern said that's a city boy truck.
An F-150?
I guess so.
So what's the Dodge Ram? Is that the...
Oh, Chevy.
Silverado?
Sure.
Like a rock? I mean, hey, make of it what you will. One texter says, I hate the Rand excuse. He can't fix everything, Jared, because our team was so bad, but he could have invested more in the line than 30-year-old skilled players. Again, I kept saying this with Tony Pollard, and I like Tony Pollard, and I liked it when they signed Tony Pollard. But if you're going to pay $8 million for a running back after you drafted a running back in the third round, I'd rather you take one of those two resources and use it at right tackle. I'd rather you have taken the money you gave. Like, I'd rather you have take the money that you gave to Pollard and give it to a right tackle. Because, again, I never heard the old man say you can't win because you don't have a running back. I did hear him say you can't win because you don't have a right tackle. And how many years of this at right tackle? I know you guys are sick of the right tackle story, but serious question.
Big country, right?
How many years of this at right tackle do we all have to watch before we can finally say, okay, Floyd was right and the Titans need a right tackle? I think most of you guys are there right now.
I think it's been since Stewart.
They had Conklin.
Oh, that's true.
But I'm talking about how many years since they let Dennis Kelly go. How many years will it take? How many GMs, how many coaches before the Titans get somebody in here who's like, no, right tackle's important? And again, how many years until the fans are like, I don't care. I don't care. I don't want to think about it. I just go get me a right tackle. How long? Because it's obvious you have to have one to win, and it's obvious the Titans haven't had one in 4 years, and yet this offseason, I was the idiot, and now I'm like freaking Buddha over here because I'm the one who's like, yeah, I spent all offseason saying they need a right tackle. For however long that is. The new Ford electric truck goes for $115,000. $115,000 on a car.
Yeah.
By the way, somebody texted in trying to guess what kind of car I had, and he guessed it on the first try.
Okay.
So congratulations to that caller. Somebody said, don't make fun of truck guys. I'm not. I'm just telling you, I'm not one of them. 615-737-1025 is the phone number, 615-737-1025 if you want to weigh in. Somebody said, I thought you go to Twice Daily every day. You still stop in convenience stores. It's not like you're not, man, I need a water, but now that I charge my car and don't have to go as often, I'm not going to go get a water now no, come on now. I just don't get gas very often, which I am appreciative of. I actually did the math, and I think I've had an e-hybrid now for a little over a year, and I think I've saved like $900 by charging my car and not getting gas, just according to the math, for whatever that's. 615-737-1025. Kaharski had a doozy today. We got to get to that next, and we will. Stillman and Company, 1025, 1063 The Game.
I do think you were talking about like the expectations. I mean, the team talked enthusiastically about players and stuff, but the team never talks about what kind of results it's expecting or anything like that. We stand with PR guys watching practice. They never say, hey, we're going to be good or anything. It's us. It's us. Now, I try to tamp it down and say, hey, we don't know. We haven't seen, whatever. And I talk about falling into the trap a lot. But the way the league is built, unless you're really the worst, like you were talking about, Joe, unless you're Carolina, you're sold hope the whole offseason from the minute your season ends in January until kickoff in September.
So that's what Paul Koharski said this morning about how don't blame the Titans for everybody's high expectations this offseason. The Titans didn't say any of that. Now, we did play our toxic positivity mix the other day in which the Titans said many things to get your hopes up. Whether it was about how great the vibes in the building were, whether it was Brian Callahan saying, I have very high expectations for this team, and Will Levis is a big reason why I took the job like he did on Bussin' with the Boys. I mean, even the other day, Tyler Boyd said, we have a Super Bowl team on paper. So don't come saying the Titans weren't the ones pumping everybody's tires. Now, that being said, there was one program that didn't buy it for a second. And I say program because when we set our expectations for the season, I had the Titans at 5 wins and Ian had them at 4. And we were the big haters out there because we're like, yeah, this team's not very good. And Ian had them at 4. So then Koharski was continuing on talking about how it's the media's fault that people got their hopes up, but saying, don't listen to the one place in the world that told you exactly what was going to happen this season.
You're sold hope.
And every year there's a Houston. There's a Bucks of last year. Every year that those teams happen.
You have to restrain yourself. Some of us do it better than others. Some, like your afternoon host, are completely shtick-filled, like doom negative. And he may have had a worse.
He's full of shtick. Is that what you're saying?
He may have had a worse view of this team than others, but he knows that they spent a lot of money on the team, and surely he knew that it is a better team, and it is a better team than last year's team
on paper.
Yeah, and in ultimate production, it's going to be a better team. I will still say. I mean, I think it'll at least equal the 6 wins. But it's us. We need to raise our hands and say it. Some of us more than others. I mean, there's some really hardy cheerleaders out there.
I don't disagree with that, but you can't take that away from me. I was right. And it's not even about me being right. I love the whole personal thing about, well, your afternoon show host, that's all shtick. That's not reality. You think I just sit around and make up the right tackle story and talk about right tackle? And you think I just went to practice and made up that Skoronski sucked? In fact, I think it's everybody else that made up that Skoronski didn't suck, because I kept talking about it on the air saying, I'm watching this guy in practice and he's getting turned around by nobodies from Seattle. And I'm like, who are these Scarbinis? And everybody else was like, oh no, Peter's having a great camp. I'm like, based on what I'm watching it, what am I missing? You think that was shtick? You think I made that up? You think I made up that PT and Duncan stink? Because a lot of people do. A lot of people out there think, Jared Stillman just is stirring the pot. Really? Stirring the pot about right tackle? Not stirring the pot at quarterback, not stirring the pot with the head coach, not stirring the pot at right tackle. Who stirs the pot at right tackle? I can promise you, in every single media workshop you'll ever have, they probably say, don't talk about right tackle. It's the single least interesting position to talk about on the radio or on TV or whatever for every other fan base except this one, because this team hasn't had a right tackle for 5 years. And now the fans are starting to realize, good God, if we don't have a right tackle, we're going to be terrible. So it actually is important. But it's always a moving target with Paul. It's never good enough. The afternoon show is never right, according to Paul. The afternoon show is never insightful, even when we are pretty much right about laying things out, according to Paul. The afternoon show is never right, even when he agrees with us, like today when he was banging on Amy Adams Strunk for firing John Robinson too early. No, no, no. It's always the afternoon show's fake. It's always the afternoon show's full of shtick. It's always something. It's always some kind of scam in the afternoons. People, he's scamming you. Yeah, scamming you by spending the entire summer talking about right tackle. That's a real scam. I think I maybe hear a hint of jealousy every time Paul gets butthurt. Because in that moment in time, they didn't bring me up. He was the one that had to be like, I think the media gets a little too over the top in the afternoon show here, which was right, but it doesn't count. It doesn't count because I said I was concerned about T'Vondre Sweat for not showing up to OTAs, which he has now moved the goalpost on and said that I said that T'Vondre Sweat was going to be a failure, which is an opinion I never had. I was concerned. When the fattest guy on the team has concerns about his weight and former executives and GMs and people around the league are going off the record to say, yeah, we couldn't draft that fat guy because he's too fat or he's too dumb or he's too whatever the reasons they gave. Yeah, I'm going to be concerned by it. Sorry. But to act as if all of a sudden I said that T'Vondre Sweat, who, by the way, hasn't become Warren Sapp yet, but to act like I said that he had no chance of being good because he missed OTAs is a total mischaracterization. But I get it because that's what he's got to say in order to make his argument look good to the people who follow him on Twitter, since they can't hear him on the radio or watch him on TV or, see him in any other meaningful media. But I'll give Paul credit. I like listening to him in the morning. I think Blake Bedingfield does a tremendous job on that site. But you got to give credit where credit's due. I believe in giving credit where credit's due. If Rand does something right, and I'm not a Rand Carthon fan, but if he does something right, he'll get credit. Problem is, they're doing too many things wrong. And I was right about that. 615-737-1025 is our phone number. Jared versus Joe is up next. Stillman and Company, 1025, 106 for the game. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook Live. We are live from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios. Let me get this out of the way just right here on the front end. Let's give away a pair of tickets to see 21 Pilots at Bridgestone Arena on October 9th. Be caller 5 at 615-737-1025, and you will win those tickets. It's 5 o'clock on a Wednesday, which means Caroline is here. Hello, Caroline.
Hello. Can you name a single 21 Pilots song?
21 Pilots. 21 Pilots.
Have you ever heard of 21 Pilots?
I think so. They're like Chicago, right?
No.
They're
Like
not the same
no.
era as Chicago?
No.
No.
Completely opposite, I think, actually.
So they're like a new age thing now.
Yeah.
Newish.
Okay, because
Like
Chicago's like from the
2010s.
70s or whatever.
Right.
Yeah, no,
Yeah,
I have
no.
no idea anything about the 21 Pilots.
I only
No.
asked because for anybody that doesn't know, Jared doesn't know any song after, like, would you say like 2011?
Well, I mean, I know some of the great new music that's out there, like the Madeline Merlot and Dustin Lynch new song that came out, the duet. I think that is just fabulous.
You love Jelly Roll.
Jelly Roll. Chase Beckham has some new songs that are pretty good. Lainey Wilson just had an album come out that's pretty good. Trying to think
Well
if there's.
played.
Thank you. Joe Rexroad is here with us on the program ahead of Jared versus Joe. You know, Joe, Bill O'Reilly used to call his show the No Spin Zone. I think we should call this show the No Sunshine Zone. After all of the sunshine pumping the Titans did this offseason to only start out 0-3. How are you, Joe?
Good. I was going to say, you also like the Brady Bunch. Let's not forget their sweet jams. Well done.
Again, I just, felt it was the right music for the right cut at the right time. But without further ado, it's time for Jared versus Joe.
Jared Stillman versus Joe Rexroad. Now on Stillman and Company.
On ESPN
102.5 The Game.
Jared versus Joe is presented by Pella Windows and Doors of Nashville. Caroline, go.
Okay, Joe, you start this week. After an 0-3 start, was Jared right in telling the right tackle story as many times as he had over the past 2 years?
Yeah, including the day after Brian Callahan got hired to Brian Callahan.
Oh, God. He is so wrong for telling it so many times. Oh, God. I don't care if the Titans never, ever even, occupy the position with another body and they just have an empty hole at right tackle. He's told the right tackle story way too often. And again, I still don't think totally understands what Ford was saying. I mean, we've kind of talked through that.
How do you not understand what he's saying? If you don't have a right tackle, you're going to stink. Have you watched the first 3 games?
Right. But I think that, again, at that point, they were so bad at that spot that was the point. Not that, the position of right tackle is of this extra importance. I mean, you're making it out like right tackle is more important than quarterback. I mean, you've told the story way too many times. I appreciate the story, though. And it's kind of become a fun thing. But I will say this. Jared said Petit Frere would stink. I said, let's wait and see. I thought he showed some good things as a rookie. Jared was right. Petit Frere stinks.
Why did you say that to Paul? Paul today said it was all shtick. Even though I don't think that talking right tackle as much as we've talked it is particularly, drama-filled radio, which if it was shtick, that's what it would be.
No, but Jared, but the thing is, there is basically every possible worst case scenario you have explored with one program or another. Like Snead's knees are going to blow up, Sweat's a fat boy, and is going to be terrible. I mean, you've kind of gone through everything. So if you do that consistently, you will be right sometimes.
Have I done it more than right tackle?
Well, the right tackle story. You have done nothing more than that.
I was not.
Brian Callahan said you only need 1 tackle.
I heard that today, and I about pissed my pants. I mean, I will tell you, and I'm glad you brought that up, Caroline, because not only was I right about right tackle, and I was right about PT, and I was right about, I say I was right about Duncan. I'm going to be right about Duncan because I think they're going to go back to PT. I think PT started.
Has anybody said Duncan was good? Has anyone else said Duncan's good?
They did. The coach did. He told Caroline. He said, we think at the combine, He said to Caroline, because Caroline asked him specifically about right tackle, and he said he thought that they have guys in PT and Duncan who show good traits. And as soon as I heard that, I thought to myself, oh, no. And everybody told me, Bill Callahan knows more than you. And I would assume that that is true. But I'm starting to get a little worried about what the Titans
You're
know.
starting to wonder if maybe you know more than Bill Callahan. Good. Keep going down that road.
I'm starting to wonder this with Brian Callahan, and I'm going to tell you why. Because today in his press conference, I heard him say that Peter Skoronski is doing well. Saying, the first game was tough for Skoronski, but the left side's been pretty good. He said after the game the other day, Pete's doing a good job. And I'm like, are we watching the same football? It reminds me of training camp, Joe. God bless you. I love you. But you were kind of the chief person in this, but it wasn't just you. But I'm watching training camp and I'm watching Skoronski get beaten. I'm like, this guy's terrible. And you guys were like, no, he's not that bad. I've seen him in camp. He looks good.
Okay.
And I'm like, what are we watching? And then Callahan would say the same thing. So everyone's like, oh, Skoronski's doing well. Skoronski's awful. And the right tackles are awful. And I don't know if Brian Callahan
good this year.
Skoronski, according to Pro Football Focus, is the worst interior offensive lineman, period. Like,
Jared, I want to ask you this. Who among the Titans press corps do you respect? Whose opinion do you respect?
Well, I mean, I respect a lot of people's opinion.
Okay. Well, then throw one out to me.
Why do I have to single out a person? Because if I single out one person, then somebody else is going to be upset about it.
Do you respect TD's opinion? Do you respect TD's opinion?
You know what? I'm gonna be as neutral as I can be. I respect Sam Phelan's opinion.
Okay.
You can't do that. He's on an island.
We'll go with Mr. Survivor. So lots of people, I would say most, would tell you that Skoronski had some good days and some bad days. And that's just the truth. He had some good reps and some bad reps. I mean, you're making it out now for people who didn't go out there and watch this. Like he was just atrocious.
That's what I thought and said at that time.
Well, then that's
and who's more likely to be right here? Because we don't have the tape, so we can't sit there and watch it and pick. But Caroline, who's more likely to be right? The guy who said, man, I think he's awful. And then him being awful, or the people that said, no, he was doing okay, and then he was awful.
What do you mean who's more likely to be right about anything ever in America?
The person who said he was awful and he was awful, or the person who said he wasn't awful and then he was awful.
That's what you're saying.
I mean, I don't know if Brian Callahan's lying when he says that Skoronski's doing a good job. He might think Skoronski's doing a good job, and I have a problem with that.
Okay, well, the coaches, there is a difference, right? There is coach speak, and there is like, well, I'm going to try to, pump up a guy or whatever. That happens. But the media people, tons of them out there, like you're suggesting basically that everyone, again, either has no idea their ass from their elbow or they're lying. Now, why would anyone lie?
I don't think anybody was lying.
You exaggerate everything.
He was terrible.
You said everything sucks. Okay, no, he was terrible.
Because I heard Paul say that today too, and I disagree with that. You've never heard me say Tony Pollard sucks. Have you ever heard me say that? I've never said DeAndre Hopkins sucks.
Congratulations, Jared.
Have I ever said DeAndre Hopkins sucks?
I'm sure you could find like 7 dudes on the roster who have not had the word suck
the good players
by Jared Stillman to them so far.
It's amazing. Yeah, amazing that I haven't said that the good players suck, but the bad players I say suck. And so now it turns into, well, he says everyone sucks. Well, a lot of people on your team do suck. That's why you're the worst team in the NFL. I don't. This idea of like, oh, Jared Stillman says it about everyone. Not saying it about Hopkins. Not saying it about Ridley. Not saying it about Pollard. Why? Because they don't.
Wait. Well, but Ridley though, but you had some good Ridley days though. Like what was it? Ridley? Oh, he doesn't have effort. He's not trying. Whatever. No,
I didn't do that. He said he wasn't trying. I didn't say he wasn't trying. He said he wasn't.
I know
trying.
what he said. Right.
And then the coach said it was hot outside, so it was okay. I got to be honest with you.
Let's all agree that Jared's always right. Will that make you feel better?
I am starting to get kind of worried about Brian Callahan. Like, I'm not going to lie. Like that Skoronski stuff, like not saying the camp, forget about training camp. Right now, Skoronski's terrible. And Brian Callahan, again, like Kayla Anderson, I think we all know Kayla Anderson around here. We all love Kayla Anderson around here. And I think we all know that her asking of questions is probably, say, nicer than the way that I would ask a question. She basically was like, is Peter doing what he's supposed to do, or do you think he could be doing a little bit better? And Brian Callahan was like, I think he's doing a good job. It's like, even she doesn't think he's doing a good job based off that question. And yet Brian Callahan thinks he's doing it. All Brian Callahan says, we all have to play better. And that tells me, okay. But instead, nope, he's doing good.
I agree with you that based on gameplay, Skoronski, that is an overstatement of his competence this year. He's not having a good year.
And that's starting to worry me. And then Brian Callahan making excuses after the game was over about Levis's pick six, saying, well, Jair Alexander just made a play on that ball. Like, I think that's an excuse. And I think that that's embarrassing. And then Jeffrey Simmons penalty. He said, well, the refs usually don't call that. Again, excuses. Oh, it's the refs' fault. I'm starting to get worried about Brian Callahan. There's some signs, some things I see that I don't like. Caroline, what's next?
Okay, Jared, you go first. Will someone, or should someone, both, two different questions, get fired for losing to Malik?
No one's going to get fired for losing to Malik. And here's the number one reason why no one's getting fired for losing to Malik. We all, not just me, we all spent all week talking about who's Amy going to fire if they lose to Malik. So much so that if Amy was just seething and just foaming on Sunday, which it wouldn't surprise me if she was, but if she was just seething on Sunday, somebody saying, yeah, Amy, you can't fire somebody, because if you fire somebody, then everybody in the media and around town is going to say, Amy, she went crazy again, because it's like she's already played those cards. And so if she plays them again, it kind of, look, I mean, Joe, I heard you guys talking about it this morning, and I think you're right. I mean, like, she's the problem. But again, I don't think anyone's going to get fired, because I think she knows at this point how just mocked she would get if she fired somebody over losing to Malik, even though losing to Malik was truly one of the most embarrassing moments in Titans history.
Yeah, I mean, on the should part of it, I'll actually answer the whole question. I don't know who it would be. I mean, like Malik came in and had a magical day, and Matt LaFleur has obviously done an incredible job with them, and good for him and Malik. And the defense was bad. I'm not firing my defensive coordinator right now. If they lost and they had another punt blocked, then I might go on an Ackerman plan real quickly around here.
I might consider doing it after they gave up a missed field goal and turned it into a touchdown. I would have thought about the special teams coach.
But I actually don't totally dismiss what Jared just said there about rabbit ears and the fact that we joked all week about a firing, and so that probably gives more job security to everybody in the short term. I think that's actually potentially on point.
Let me just say this, though, about the whole firing thing. Like, I think, we're all friends here. The next in line is probably Rand, right? Because if we were to say this musical chairs of coach and GM, and, they fired the GM and they, said that we love the coach, and then they hired Rand and then they fired the coach. And so the next person would be Rand, just going off of the, musical blame. But Diana Rossini did say last week that Chad Brinker's the one who's in charge now. And so it's like, for instance, the fact that this team doesn't have a right tackle, do you blame Rand for that? Like, is it fair to fire Rand, based off of some of the roster construction issues, when, again, it sounds, according to Joe's colleague at The Athletic, Diana Rossini, not Jared Stillman, because apparently nobody believes it if I start to think it, but according to Joe's colleague at The Athletic, Diana Rossini, that Chad Brinker's in charge. It's like, is it fair to Rand to fire Rand? Does it do anything to fire Rand? Like, I mean, that's a serious question I have.
I do feel like there will be a sacrificial lamb before you get to either Rand or Brian Callahan or Chad Brinker. Like, it's going to be Colt Anderson before it's going to be Rand Carthon.
See, I would agree with that, except that that's what I thought when I told you, Caroline, the day after the AJ game. I'm like, another organization, somebody gets fired. And I was thinking like a defensive coordinator or a, secondary coach. And she hauled off and fired the GM. So, I mean, it feels like when Amy comes shooting, she comes shooting for the bullseye. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But again, it's like if they fire Rand, for instance, what does that do? Like, because what is it Rand's fault that you don't have a right tackle? Because again, Diana says Brinker's in charge. So then if you fire Brinker, do you then promote Rand into the spot that Brinker's in? You see what I'm saying?
Yes, I see what you're saying. And it's difficult with a wild card owner.
Well, I tend to agree with Caroline on I understand what happened before, but also I think Amy hears things, here's what people are saying and writing, et cetera, et cetera. And I think a sacrificial lamb makes sense. Also, I'm sorry, but when you go to this extent to put this all together and to finally have, now you got it lined up with Rand and with Callahan, and you promoted Brinker and did all that, and we're vague about it, but you've done all this stuff. You brought in analytics people. Yeah, you haven't really changed out scouts a lot, but you've done all this stuff. I just can't imagine that this year you're then going to fire anybody key in that operation. And frankly, I don't see how you do, unless again there's information we don't have about incompetence behind the scenes. But them being a bad football team this year, I know they spent a lot of money and all that, and you have to see how they're a bad football team. Like if all these, if Snead does get hurt and whatever, like all these acquisitions all tank it maybe.
If they don't have a right tackle.
But you knew. Well, look, they made a choice. They said what their choice is. They said what they believed could happen. Right now, it's working out terribly. But you also knew they weren't going to address every single position. There were going to be some holes on this roster. It was too bad to come in and immediately, in one offseason fix everything. But I just don't see how you can seriously consider blowing up this operation this quickly, even if it's a terrible year on the field and it continues this way.
But don't you think that, so you think even if they end up with the number 1 pick, so they go 3-14, which I hate to say it, but this does kind of look like a 3-14 team. So let's say they go 3-14. You think she is then going to leave everybody in place and let them choose who gets picked number 1?
Well, again, that's where maybe someone else in the operation gets fired or something. But look, man, you just blew everything up. And you're talking about first year for a coach, second year for a GM, first year for Brinker in this different role when he was brought in by the GM to be his assistant. I mean, I understand it. That sounds like a terrible year. And again, I do need to see how it plays out and what happens. But yeah, I think in general, that's rash decision making from an owner who has been hammered for rash decision making.
Sure.
And I think at some point you need to kind of stick with something and see if it can work.
If these guys aren't very good, and I think we need to keep in mind that John Robinson got fired when he had won back-to-back division titles and was 7-5 and had never had a losing season. And right now, this team, they inherited his team, and they have turned it into the worst team in the NFL. And so you can make whatever excuse you want to make. They've made it worse. Like they have made Carthon and his group. And if you want to throw Vrabel into this or Callahan, you can, but they've made it worse. So now if you get the number 1 pick and you let these guys that are worse than the guy that you fired because he wasn't good enough, and you let them use the number 1 pick and pick a quarterback, now aren't you just throwing good money after bad?
Yeah.
And isn't that a terrible idea?
Look, they're in a bad spot. They're in a bad spot. But again, look, I just think as we sit here now, 3 games in with so much to happen, I think that Amy should be looking at this like it was bad. It's a bad situation. Some of these things have not worked well, have not worked as well as hoped. Including the quarterback is a huge part of this. I mean, the quarterback's a huge part of this right now. If the quarterback doesn't have the mistakes he had in the first 2 weeks, it's very easy. It could be a 2-1 team, still with a lot of the same issues, but it would feel a lot different, right? I mean, some of this, like the winning and losing aspect of this, magnifies everything so much. It makes the bad seem worse. It makes the good seem better than it really is.
If
I also
this
think
hadn't
the new
happened,
stadium
or if we hadn't had another quarter,
I think the new stadium expedites any of that decision making as well. Like, I don't think Amy Adams Strunk wants to open up the new stadium in 2027, coming off of a 5-12 season.
yeah. But then
I know
again,
we've got time until then.
I don't think when she fired John Robinson, she thought that season was going to go in the trash can. I don't think that she thought that she was going to have a worse team the next year. And I don't think she thought when she fired John Robinson in the middle of the season that 2 years later she was going to have the worst team in the NFL.
Well,
But here
of
we
course
are.
not. But here we are.
More Jared versus Joe to continue. Presented by Pella Windows and Doors, 1025, 1063 The Game. Jared versus Joe is presented by Pella Windows and Doors of Nashville. Our phone lines, by the way, are driven by WilsonCountyHunter.com. One texter texted in and said, hold on, let me make sure I get this. To be honest, Jared, the morning guys are a bunch of haters, specifically towards you. People don't like hearing the truth in 2024 as it makes them uncomfortable. Joe is constantly changing his stance and manipulating his words. Keep speaking facts, man. Somebody has to. Joe replied, shut up, and did not sign it. So I just want that texter to know that was not me that said shut up out of anger. That was Joe. Just so everybody knows.
Joe, are you a hater?
Hater.
Jared, can you guys hear me or no?
Go.
Yeah, don't edit people who don't know how to put English words together. He actually said, Joe is constantly changing his stance and manipulated words. Hey, dude, try to write a sentence. Let's start there, bro. Thank you.
-1 for grammar. Correcting a texter. Caroline, go.
I just told him to shut up.
Joe's definitely a stickler for the right form of your or their. But Joe,
is it bad, by the way, that I'm a stickler for that for me? Like, I don't care if you say you're like, you're ready, Y-O-U-R. I mean, it makes me maybe think a little less of you, but like, it doesn't, whatever. But like, if I use the wrong form, I am just devastated for about 45 seconds.
I understand that.
Good to know.
Joe, you go first. Should the Jags 0-3 start, and truly how dreadful they looked the other night, make Titans fans feel better about the Titans 0-3 start?
No, it shouldn't. But I suppose misery-loving company is a real thing. So you can at least sort of, I guess you could sort of take your mind off it a little bit and watch Trevor Lawrence and know that they have paid him. So your team, is not in the same bind. But I don't think you can feel better about that just because things are rough enough here. You should focus on your team. And the fact that you may be jousting with the Jags for last place. I mean, how does that make you feel better? I mean, now are they underachieving more than you? Yes, if that's the case, if things continue to go this way. So again, misery loves company, but feeling better, I think, is a little bit strong.
Here's what I would say. I don't feel better than I think Jacksonville should feel. And I'll tell you why. To me, the answer is simple in Jacksonville. If things continue along this path, you fire the GM, you fire the coach. I mean, they're not going to fire the quarterback. They owe him $275 million. So they think they have a quarterback. I mean, I talked to Tony Khan.
Do they still think that?
I talked to Tony Khan the week after they signed signed Trevor Lawrence. And I mean, I'm pretty sure Tony Khan felt certain that they had their starting quarterback for eons. And again, if I was in their position, I'd rather hire somebody else to try to get Lawrence right than try to move off of Lawrence, if that makes any sense. So,
well, you also hit on a reason that Jags fans should feel bad because you just mentioned ownership, which, as someone who spent his youth following the Detroit Lions, I can tell you, if you got bad ownership, it doesn't matter what you do. Keep firing people.
Yeah, but that doesn't make me feel any better about the Titans.
Sure. I'm just saying.
But again, going back to Jacksonville, the answer in Jacksonville is simple. Now, it doesn't mean it's the correct answer, but this is the answer. This is what would happen if I own the team, if you own the team, if Shad Khan owned the team, if Attila the Hun owned the team. Like, this is what would happen is they're going to fire the coach and fire the GM. They're not firing the quarterback. Like, it's simple. Here, I don't know what the answer is. Like, if Levis is not the guy and this team stinks, what is the answer? Because Joe just told me in the last segment, I'm not allowed to fire the coach and the GM or the president or whoever's in charge around here. I'm not allowed to fire that person because that would look too bad because I've been firing everybody apparently left and right.
No,
which I understand.
If you invest in something as an owner and have way more information than I have or you have, you would think that you'd have some confidence that over time it can work. I didn't say you're not allowed. I'm just saying, like, what do you do when you're hiring these people? What are you doing? Are you talking to them? Like, do you have any sense of the plan?
again,
I mean, you're like Jacksonville can just fire the GM. Okay, great.
They can.
They just fire the GM and coach, and they're stuck with the quarterback. At least the Titans are not stuck with the quarterback.
See, here's where I guess I'll disagree, because even though I'm not a huge Lawrence fan, and I think I think they paid him too early. When they paid him, I was like, I think that's too early. I said, I think they think that he's Joe Burrow. He's not Joe Burrow. I've never thought that. But at the same time, if your life depended on it, who's going to end up being the better quarterback? Trevor Lawrence or Will Levis / Carson Beck / Shedeur Sanders / Cam Ward / Quinn Ewers? I still think I'd take Lawrence, even though I'm not a Lawrence guy. So
okay,
I'd
but
rather
also you've already paid him, so you have to take him. So it's not a choice. I mean, like, he has been paid. You are stuck with him.
Right.
So,
but again, I'd rather try to get Lawrence some better coaching and a better GM and see if I can win with that than I would if I'm running it back with Brinker, Rand, Callahan, and hoping that Shedeur Sanders is the answer to my prayers.
Okay.
Caroline?
All right, last one. Jared, you go first. Is UNLV's quarterback right to do what he did in opting out of the entirety of the rest of the season because of NIL?
I don't know. I don't know who's telling the truth. Somebody here is telling the truth, and somebody is lying. And somebody, if they promised him $100,000 and they didn't pay it, I don't have a problem with that. Just like I don't have a problem with the fact that if you owe the NES, the electric company, and you don't pay it, they shut the bill off. Oh my God, you can't shut my electricity off. It's sorry. That's how it works. So if they offered him $100,000 and they haven't paid him $100,000, I do not have a problem with him withholding services. Let me ask you, would you do your job if you didn't get paid, Caroline?
No.
So that would be my thing. But UNLV's saying that that's not what happened. UNLV's saying we have paid what we were supposed to pay, or our collective, our people have paid what we're supposed to pay. And because we started 3-0, this guy all of a sudden thinks he's hot stuff. And so he wants more money now, and he's trying to hold out after the fact. And if that's the case, I got a problem with that. So whoever is telling the truth, I'm on their side. And I know that sounds wishy-washy, but it's impossible for me in Nashville, Tennessee to know who's telling the truth. And both stories sound equally as plausible. So that's what I'm sticking with. And I think they should go on Judge Judy, which is now called Judy Justice on Freebie. And that should be the NIL payment is what they make for doing that. It would be the most exposure Judy Justice could get. And I'm sure they'd have no problem paying it. And Judge Judy would ring the two of them out, the two sides, and we'd get to the bottom of this. And so, again, whoever's telling the truth is whose side I'm on. I just don't know who's telling the truth.
Yeah. I agree with that. Like, obviously, I don't know. I don't know who's telling the truth. Someone certainly is lying. And you've got the OC's sort of agent out there putting stuff out there, which is real problematic. But I will say that, first of all, on both sides of it, if you're a quarterback in a family, like, you need, this is why you need things in writing, or, you need, it sounds like maybe they were taken advantage of, if they're telling the truth. I also have to look at UNLV, and they put out this, this statement that they said they never agreed to $100,000, and, that made a payment of $3,000, and then talking about $3,000 a month after that. Dude, how do you think you are lucky as hell to have anyone who can even throw a forward pass in today's game? I know it's UNLV. It's not a power, but this is a team that right now is in position to make the playoff. And even if that's the case, I have a problem if that collective and the school didn't on their own say, we got to give this kid some more money.
Agreed. If you're the coach, and this is about $100,000, and like, I know technically the coach can't pay the player, but we also, we know. So if I'm the coach, I don't know how much the UNLV football coach makes, but I'm sure it's over $1 million. Like, dude. Oh,
yes.
Pay the quarterback. Like,
you know his name. You know who it is.
Who's the UNLV coach?
Barry Odom.
Barry Odom.
Oh, Barry. I know Barry Odom's got it. Barry, write him a check. Be like, okay, come to my office at 3:00 after practice. Here, $100,000 signed Barry Odom. Here you go.
$1.8 million. He makes $1.8 million.
Seriously.
It's embarrassing to me for this come out that UNLV is like, yeah, how about a little bit a month? We'll give you some, we'll pay your utilities. It's like, dude, if a kid performs the way he did and he has performed at a high level, and has him in position to be able to play, then you need to proactively pay him more money, and regardless of the other he said, she said stuff around this.
I don't necessarily, I understand what you're saying. I don't necessarily believe that. I don't believe that if in fact it's true that he's decided he wants more money because they're winning and he's going to take his ball and go home. If he's threatening a holdout because he wants more money, like he's TO at Eagles camp, I got a problem with that. Because it's like, dude, you agreed for the season. You got to sign up for the season. Now, if there's ambiguity, which is probably most likely here, between what the offer was and what UNLV agreed to do, then I think Barry Odom needs to smooth over the ambiguity. But if it is this guy is trying to take advantage of the situation and he's going to let his team down over it, I got a problem with that. Whereas, again, if it's a misunderstanding and you're making $1.8 million, I probably would make the misunderstanding go away.
Well, and now their running back is opting out of the rest of the season too. So it looks like this is not just an isolated quarterback situation.
Maybe that's why Barry Odom can't pay the $100,000, because it's easy to say we'll pay $100,000, but you can't do it for everybody. I mean, again, Barry Odom's making $1.8 million. You can do it for one quarterback. I'm not sure you can do it for everybody. That's a little hairy of a pickle there. Caroline, who wins this week?
Awfully hairy pickle indeed. Jared wins this week because of your point on Trevor Lawrence and the Jags. And I am in 100% agreement with you that I think it's easier to find a head coach that can work with Trevor freaking Lawrence, because I don't think that all of a sudden overnight Trevor Lawrence became a doo-doo quarterback. It's easier to find a coach that can work with him than it is for the Titans to find a franchise quarterback. And want to know why I know that? Because the Titans have never had a franchise quarterback. So Jared wins.
Yes. Although McNair was a franchise quarterback.
So I thought Doug Peterson was this great coach. No, quarterback. No, that's
Urban Meyer was supposed to be this great coach too.
Wow.
I never bought that, but yeah. I'm surprised that Peterson, that it's gone to crap as fast as it has under Peterson. I am legitimately surprised by that. I didn't think he was a terrible coach, but
apparently so.
His team is terrible. But
the prince who was promised, I'm sure he's going to be fine.
Again, okay, last one, and then we're out here. You get the pick between brand new coach, brand new GM, so you can go get like the Chargers went and got Jim Harbaugh. You can go get somebody with Lawrence, or Callahan, Brinker, and Carthon with Beck, Sanders, Ewers, or Ward. Which would you rather have?
Sam Darnold.
Well, I think there's a pretty good chance he might be the quarterback of the Titans next year. And by the way, who was right about that one too, Joe?
You just right about everything. What can I say?
Don't tell Kaharski that.
Let's ignore all the stuff you're wrong about.
Jared versus Joe is presented by Pella Windows and Doors, and we are to your phones reacting next. 615-737-1025 at Stillman and Company, 1025, 106 for the game.
You're sold hope.
And every year
you
there's
have
a
to
Houston.
restrain.
There's a Bucks of last year. Every year that those teams have.
You have to restrain yourself. Some of us do it better than others. Some, like your afternoon host, are completely shtick-filled, like doom negative. And he may have had a worse.
He's full of shtick. Is that what you're saying?
He may have had a worse view of this team than others, but he knows that they spent a lot of money on the team, and surely he knew that it is a better team, and it is a better team than last year's team
on paper.
Yeah, and in ultimate production, it's going to be a better team. I will still say. I mean, I think it'll at least equal the 6 wins, but it's us. We need to raise our hands and say it. Some of us more than others. I mean, there's some really hardy cheerleaders out there.
Kaharski saying, I mean, he knows that team better than it was last year. He knows that. Well, then Kaharski was obviously not at the Canadian Royal Yacht Club 5 or 6 weeks ago when at a wedding, 2 people in Nashville at the Canadian Royal Yacht Club in Toronto were getting married, and somebody came up and was like, Jared, we're better than we were last year. And I'm like, I'm not totally sure about that. It was like, no, we added all these people, Jared. And I'm like, yeah, but you lost Derrick Henry. You lost Nico Autry. The schedule's tougher. I mean, I said, I was like, I'm not convinced that you're better. So now why after 0-3 would I be convinced that you're a better football team than you were last year, PK? By the way, if you're a Titan fan, you live in the Nashville market, you got 2 games on Fox as part of the doubleheader. The Titans and the Packers and the Ravens and the Cowboys. Guess who got the game ball in the first game, Ian?
Who's that?
Malik Willis, who was on your team last year.
Mm-hmm.
Guess who got the game ball in the second game?
The King.
And he's not on your team either.
Mm-mm.
So are you better? Serious question. So I want to get to some of your texts during Jared versus Joe, but Joe's making it hard because he's replying to all the people in the text line. One texter says, dude, you're the biggest hater on the station. And that texter is just pumping sunshine. You're so shook and scared of PK, you won't show up when he's on the show on Fridays. Grow some with an exclamation point. So I don't think I've ever addressed this before, but I do know that a couple of weeks ago, I did not go on Robbie and Rex Road on a Friday that Robbie was off and Paul was in. You know, I go on 7 o'clock every Friday. And Paul and Joe were sitting there saying, he's scared. And I said, again, the reason why I couldn't respond at that time was because the night before I texted Robbie. I didn't even know Robbie was going to be off that day. I texted Robbie and I said, I'm going to be on Sirius tomorrow morning, so I can't come on the show. So I was doing my other job, my national syndicated job. I was doing that as opposed to being able to banter with PK in his job getting fill in on local radio. That's why I wasn't able to come on. That being said, I've been on with PK plenty. And the thing about Paul, I like Paul. The thing about Paul is sometimes you got to throw 97 up and in, back him up off the plate. And I'm not afraid to do that. And I think some people over here, around here, should not be afraid to back him up off the plate either. 615-737-1025 is the phone number. One texter says, the Titans are worse than last year, period. I mean, I need them to win a game. They lost to Malik. Like, we need to stop forgetting about the fact that they lost. They didn't just lose. They got embarrassed by Malik. You suck. Everybody needs to realize that. You're, if not the worst team in the league, the second to worst team. Last year, you were the 7th worst team. So right now, you're the second. I just saw the line right now on SportsCenter. Miami is -1.
Oh,
They're
it's
favored
switched, huh? It was
with no
+1.
quarterback. They don't have a quarterback, and they're favored. But yeah, I'm supposed to say because they spent a bunch of money on running backs and corners that they're a better team this year. Again, I don't think you get better when you don't have Derrick Henry on your team. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106 for the game. like Brian Callahan. I do. I want everybody to know that. I root for Brian Callahan. I'm a Titans fan. I like the idea of the guru coach. I am in favor of Brian Callahan being the coach here. But today, he violated a red line. I saw that, like in politics, I saw that some people have, brought back their endorsements of people because they've seen things they don't like. Today, Brian Callahan was talking about the right tackle position. Right tackle is very, very important to me. And he was asked, hey, of course, and J.C. Latham's doing a good job at left tackle. And he was asked if he could survive with just one good tackle. And here's what Brian Callahan had to say.
Do in the NFL with one side tackle wise being serviceable? Can you
No.
coach around having one strong tackle?
Yeah, I think so. I've been in places where we've done it. Yes, there is a way you can help. I mean, very few people have 5 all-pro starters. Very few people have 2 tackles that are of the same calibers. Some do, but very few do. And you have to find ways to help that. I mean, you're always trying to help your weaknesses somewhere. Very few teams are complete when it comes to having everything you absolutely would want to have on a roster. And that's our job as coaches, is to find ways to, one, highlight our strengths, and 2, try to find a way to minimize whatever our weaknesses are, because everybody has them. Everybody's got strengths and weaknesses on their roster, on their team, at whatever positions. And that's my job, to put guys in position to highlight those things, and then again to help where we don't have, where we consider our weaknesses might be. So yeah, it's definitely possible. I think it happens all around the league.
Let me just say this. If I was the owner and I was interviewing Brian Callahan for the job, and he said that, like he said, hey, I'm hopeful that I only need one tackle and I can work around it and we can maximize Scarbini's that aren't any good, I would close my binder right then and there. And I would say, thank you so much for coming in. Jeannie down the hallway, she'll get you taken care of, getting your flight out of here. Let me know if there's anything that you think of. Here's my number. Feel free to call me. But I really, really enjoyed spending time getting to know you. And then as soon as he walked out and the door shut, I'd say, okay, on to the next. I'd say, bring Bobby Slowick back in here, because I don't, if this guy thinks he doesn't need a right tackle, then I'm not interested. And if Brian Callahan really doesn't think that he needs a right tackle, I am concerned. And considering what they did not do in the offseason at right tackle, they did not explore a right tackle. They brought Andrus Peat in for a visit, who I thought they should have signed, if for no other reason, because at that point in time, they didn't have a left tackle or a right tackle, and you don't know who's going to draft. Who? Like, if Marvin Harrison had been there and you had taken him, now what are you going to do without one tackle? So I would have signed Andrus Peat, or I would have signed Jermaine Illuminor, or I would have signed one of these guys, and I would have rolled with it. But I guess Brian Callahan didn't think they needed that. And I don't know how you can be a Titan fan. And again, I'm rooting for his success. I don't know how you can be a Titan fan and not be concerned by hearing somebody say that. Because he said when he got the job, hey, it's not just the offensive line. There are things we can do that can protect the quarterback when calling plays. And I heard it just like everybody else and thought, okay, maybe this guy knows something we don't. Tonight is the annual Gold Star game down in Clarksville. The Predators will be having their inter-squad scrimmage. And to me, that's kind of like, all the players play in this. This isn't like a preseason game where half the team plays. This is pretty much everybody. And Max and Pete will have you tonight. That's coming up next. Stillman and Company. We will see everybody tomorrow at 2.